Hi, hello, welcome. My name is not important, and so is yours, because we're not here to make friends. We're not here to make friends. We're here to discuss the absolute brain rot that is my conspiracy wall for the deltarune chapters 3 and 4. And obviously, like what we found out in the first two chapters, but with the context of the other chapters. I think a few disclaimers before we start are in order, because this is not your typical, I don't even know what kind of videos this is, because this is not really a breakdown of anything besides my personal brain rot about this video game, this beautiful, beautiful video game. And there are gonna be series. It is not the main focus, let's say. The main focus is like establishing, let's say, the lore. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe this is establishing the lore we know post chapter 3 and 4. Because as you can see, this is obvious, it doesn't have every character. And before anyone points out, yes, Bradley here is only because I like him. He genuinely has nothing to do with the lore, almost nothing. But I love him, and I would be so sad if he was not on my conspiracy wall. So we just have to deal with it. So this is the second disclaimer. This is a very biased board in a way that it's like I'm putting what I think is important, and I'm putting the connections I think are in there, in the game, in the lore. And also, it's important to note that because this is not really a run-through of the lore, you're not really gonna find out lore chronologically from my statements. Because I'm gonna be like, switching subjects, looking at other things while, we're still discussing the first thing. So this is gonna be more like, you have to know deltarune. This is what I'm getting at. I'm really sorry, but you have to know deltarune. Maybe not everything, like obviously you don't have to be the lore master, but you have to have played the games or wish someone plays the games. Preferably, you would have also known about some of the secrets, but don't worry, I'll most likely be, like, explaining those. And if there's anything you don't really understand and I'm just jumping on it and expecting everyone to understand what I'm going on about, then feel free to just, like, shout me out in the comments and being like, hey, what the fuck are you talking about on this minute? I'll be happy to answer. I love talking about this game. And I think the last disclaimer is that it's gonna be, I mean, I made this disclaimer already, but it's gonna be like really brain rotted in a way that's like you really had to be there for 4 years to get to the point of obsession I got to. Which I was there for 4 years. And I got my obsession to the point it got to. So think of this as like discussion space, let's call it. Let's call it discussion space. I'm gonna lay out a lot of interesting threads and evidence that I found in the game, that other people found in the game, and we're gonna try, obviously I'm gonna try and connect it all, but there will be enough interesting threads that I cannot really tie into this whole narrative that you might get something out of this video, even if you don't agree with everything I say. And also, last disclaimer, I swear, I tend to ramble. So I will probably be jumping from topic to topic because there's, I remember something about Carol's holiday and then like boom, there's another symbol or metaphor or like whatever, and I need to talk about something else. And sometimes I get sucked into these holes. I will try to stay on track. I even have like, I don't have a script. This is just pure, like, me coming at you. But I do have, like, some topics I want to touch on in a specific order, and I will try to stick to that. But I'll be honest, I am not the best at staying on script. So, we'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes. Maybe it's not gonna be that bad. But judging from the test runs I did to some of my friends trying to explain this, it's probably gonna be bad. We'll see. Let us start from the beginning. And by the beginning, I mean Undertale. Because before, I am a staunch believer in the fact that you have to play Undertale to play deltarune. I don't think it's like 100% necessary, and if you don't do that, you're never gonna get it, or like, you know, you're the scum of the earth. No, whatever. Genuinely, like, it's your decision. But I think the most enjoyment out of deltarune and the lore of deltarune you're gonna get if you played Undertale, because Undertale leaves a lot of interesting concepts that when you notice them in deltarune, you're like, okay, what the fuck is happening? Like, you get like new questions, you get like new perspectives, you get new threads to pull at. So I do think that Undertale is kind of like if you really want to get into the lore, you have to play Undertale. I'm sorry, it's just like required. So let's start with Undertale. I'm not gonna go through Undertale because I'm also assuming you know what Undertale is. It's been like almost 10 years. It's been almost 10 years. So like, I'm assuming you know Undertale. And like, yes, Undertale is very also like, you know, important to Deltarune lore, but it's very important to not, you know, treat them as prequel sequel. Because if you try to put Undertale and Deltarune on a timeline, it doesn't really work. There's a lot of like questions about how it would logistically work that, I mean, you can cope, and I will probably touch on it like closer to the end of the video, because then I will explore all of the concepts, insane concepts that I'm gonna talk about, and it will be easier to process why I'm saying this. But just believe me, it doesn't really make sense to put them on a sequel prequel scale. I think Toby Fox said it best. It's an alternative universe. It's another world. Whatever happened in Undertale is like separate from Deltarune, but not really. But it's separate, but not really. We'll get to it. Let's talk about one of the most important people in Undertale and Deltarune by, I wouldn't say by proxy, but something fuck is happening. And it starts in Undertale, probably. So we'll go to him. We'll go to W.D. Guster. And we'll go to W.D. Guster in Undertale first. Because in Undertale, we learn about him from third-person perspective. And we never hear from him directly. And I think, well, we do hear from him directly once, but I'll get to it. But I wouldn't say like it's directly him talking to us. It's us hearing him talk or reading his text, depending on what you want to believe. So it's interesting on how W.D. Guster is perceived by other characters, even if these characters are supposedly his followers, because we get a bit about him as a person in a way that's like who he was. And he was a royal scientist before Alphys, and he created the core, and presumably was the first owner of the True Lab, but, you know, I'm not 100% set on that. That can be Alphys as well. And we learn also that he fell into his own creation. What the creation is, we don't know. I have my guesses, we'll get to that. But a very popular opinion, by the way, in the early fandom was that he fell into the core, because core is, like, you know, mentioned as his creation. And maybe also from the fact that people saw he fell into the core, another kind of like misconception about him popped out in the fanon. And it was the fact that people saw he might have been like forgotten or like wiped from existence. I do believe he was forgotten. I don't believe he was wiped from existence, but I don't think he was forgotten by some, you know, mystical or magical means or whatever. I think he was like naturally forgotten like over the years, but that might be a cope because of his connection to Sans and Papyrus by being also named after a font, but I don't know. And the interesting thing about and the last interesting thing about W.D. Guster is the fact that he describes a dark world. He describes a dark world, and he does it in Undertale. He did it in 2015, before it was hype, okay? He was a trendsetter. So, in the hidden entry number 17, there are two entries, number 17. One is a hidden entry, oh, they are from the True Lab, by the way. I think you know that, but just in case. One entry is by Alphys, and another one was by Gaster. And the Gaster one has this sound effect. I wouldn't call it music. Sound effect. Muse_smile, and it describes basically a dark world. It's like I don't remember the exact wording. I'm not brain-rotted enough in that direction. It's something like photon readings are negatives, the shadows are cutting deeper. What do you two think? Basically, it's describing like a dark world. Think about it. Photon readings are negative. If something is like in the minus, in the negative, it means it's like probably absorbing whatever is around it and also making it. That's how it gets like the negative. Because like otherwise I cannot explain like negative photon readings. Obviously I'm not the first one to come up with this concept. It's like it's been discussed in the fandom before. And the shadows cutting deeper, this can be kind of like either the creation of a dark world or stumbling upon a dark world, getting it out of its containment, like opening the door, for example, and seeing the shadows, that kind of like dark light, can I call it that? Darkness seeping out and making everything around it dark as well. That's basically what the entry is describing. This is 100% a dark world. We didn't know that at the time. A lot of people were kind of stumped by what this meant. People focused more on who the what do you two think phrase of the entry. Obviously, a very popular guess was Sans and Papyrus. I mean, for a good reason. Once again, these two have names after fonts. This one has a name after a font. So, what's stopping them from being connected, right? That, of course, once again throws a wrench into my theory that he was naturally forgotten. But I still stand by that. And why I mentioned that he was being kind of like described or personified in third person in Undertale. Well, because in deltarune he speaks to us directly. Yes. I know, right? I'm obviously not the first person to, point it out. There's an amazing theory about it. The device theory by Molly Stars. Oh my god, Molly Stars, I love you. She got me through 2024, okay? Like, I loved her video. Anyway. Obviously, like, if you're familiar with the device theory or in general, like, with some of the more popular fandom interpretation of the story, is the fact that Gaster is the one who's talking to us in the Gunner Maker. The first interaction with the game, let's call it. Obviously, now that there are more than one chapter, it's not as, let's call it mandatory for the Gunner Maker to appear. Because now, if you don't start your save on the first chapter, you don't get to make a gunner. You get, like, default values. Those are very interesting as well. I don't know what to think about them, but those are really interesting. There are default values to how your vessel looks, to what the answer to the questions about the vessel is. Like, the favorite taste, the kind of the favorite color, everything, like it's all set with one with all of them being like more or less the first option, besides like what is the gift to your creation. That one is mind or voice, I don't remember, but that one is different. And it's like, if you look into the code, it's because Toby's code is spaghetti code, but I still think it's intentional. I think his spaghetti code was intentionally spaghetti to make this work. Because otherwise I think he would have pushed it out, like, or maybe not. I don't know. I'm not Tommy Fox. I'm not Tricky Tony. Enough conjecture. No, there's still some conjecture. I'm sorry. But, if you know, you know. But Gaster took over Toby Fox's Twitter, in on Halloween 2018, and on Halloween of 2018, Gaster, or it took Toby Fox's Twitter, Toby Fox's name became 6 black boxes, and the person who was typing instead of Toby Fox, or like Toby Fox typing as this person, whatever you want to look at it, they were typing in a way that was really reminiscent of how the entry 17 is written, and later also how the Gunner Maker is spoken. So it's 100% Gaster. Gaster is talking to us on Twitter. It's kind of funny because in 2021, when Chapter 2 came out, he acknowledged the fucking pandemic. It was very funny. So yeah, now every release, the Tricky Tony is overtaken by the mask of W.D. Gaster and is forced to type as him on his twitter.com profile. I actually didn't catch the tweets for this release, like in person. I did see them, but in general, it's just it's not that important in my personal opinion to understanding the story and the lore, but it is interesting because he's reaching out to us, especially the first reach out, right? The first reaching out was him saying that he prepared something wonderful for us. He can't wait for us to get our hands on it, basically, and he's like, my deltarune is waiting or something. No, actually that was like from the end of chapter 4. No? I might be mixing it up in my head. But yes, he's like, my creation is waiting, and he's directing us to a survey program that you have to disable your antivirus for, which I didn't have a nice antivirus back then, so I didn't even know about that. But it was kind of funny back then. And it's very interesting to know that the first demo of the game, like the first chapter, the first version, was called the Survey Program. It was version 0.6. I don't remember if they have like dots between them or if it's just like 666. But anyway, it's like, once again, throwing back to Gaster was his 666 motif. And after you agree to very weird end-user agreement from the survey program, you are thrown into the game and you are met with Gaster. And it's 100% Gaster. Like, there's so many evidence, like the music, the way he talks, the cadence of his, well, it's not voice, but the text, you know. Gaster makes you make a vessel, and after that we're interrupted by a second voice. I have my theories on the second voice. It's not Kara, but we'll get back to it later a bit. And after that, our soul, that was, by the way, summoned to the Gunner Maker. If you remember, it's kind of like flashes, you know. Anyway, after this, we are interrupted, and we are thrown into Chris, the youngest of the Dreamer family. And oh boy, this family, man. Oh, I have thoughts, man. I have thoughts. But let's start with some conjecture. I want to talk to you about whose soul is this? Who is this? I think there are two main theories that I think are plausible. One is that it's Chris's soul and we take over control Chris's soul. I'm not sold on that one. And my personal belief theory is that this is us being like kind of personified as a character, as an entity in the game. And we are fully independent from Chris, and Chris maybe possibly doesn't have a soul. I'm not sold on the no soul deal, but I am sold on us being completely separate entity, not related to Chris in any capacity. And before anyone comes and yells at me, I also don't believe in three entities and all of that. So no, I also don't believe in two souls. So it leaves us with the null soul, but I don't know how I feel about that either. I'm not sold on it. But let's cut back to dreamers. Let's come back to these sad fucks. I completely forgot I put pizza before this into the oven, and now I don't have a dinner, but I don't care because we're going back to the autism. So I think it would be like kind of pointless introducing dreamers without introducing holidays, because think about it. These two are the same age. They are the youngest kids in the family. They have older siblings. Both are missing. For different reasons, obviously. Des is missing, and Azrael is just off to college, but still, like, they're not around in their life. Judging by how Chris Googles summer vacation, as we see in chapter 2, and we hear from Toriel and Asgore that Azrael hasn't visited in a while, I think it's safe to say Azrael did not come home for summer, and Chris is feeling abandoned because of that. So yes, let's say both siblings are missing. Not in the same regard, but still. And both fathers, Rudy and Asgore, are kind of out of the picture. I wouldn't say they're out of the picture, like, completely, especially, like, in Rudy's case, they are not divorced like Asgore and Toriel. But it is interesting that, like, Asgore is not living with Chris and Toriel, obviously, so Asgore doesn't really have a present in Chris's life unless Chris is deciding to visit him. Because, like, it's very obvious Toriel is not gonna let this fuck into the house. Like, obviously I don't think she's not gonna let him into the house, but I don't think he's, welcome there. It actually makes me wonder what the custody looks like. Like, or is this because Asgore doesn't have a house? Also, isn't it weird that Asgore is the chief of police, doesn't have obviously he's a former chief of police, but have you seen the salaries of those pigs? How does he not have a house? Did he just, put everything on Toriel's name? Or did she just, because I don't think whatever he did would make the whatever court decide that, she has to get everything. Was it her house? And he is so flat broke, even after getting that pig salary for so long? I don't know, man. I know I'm not supposed to look so deep into it, but isn't it fun to do it anyway? And yes, so Asgore is not in the picture. He is basically on the whims of Chris to visit him. And with Noel and Rudy, it's kind of similar in a way that Rudy can't really visit because he's constantly in the hospital. And it seems like he can go out, but he's not strong enough to do it. Like, he's feeling worse and worse, it seems. So he can't really visit home, and he's not home despite not being divorced with Carol. And he can only really talk to his kid if Noel comes to visit him. Like, obviously they all have phones, seemingly. Like, that was kind of like a question back when chapter 1 came out, because we didn't see like what the phones look like. And all of the tech looked kind of like a bit retro, maybe. So we didn't know what time it took place, where cell phones were like super, like, even in 2000s, like, obviously the cell phones were everywhere, but still, we didn't know. But now we all know they all have smartphones, so it's not like, they can't contact each other. But I'm talking about, like, if they want to talk in real life, Noel has to come visit him. And unlike Chris, she does. She constantly comes and visits him. But at the same time, both Chris and Noel, they live with their mothers, with Carol and Toriel respectively. And It's also very interesting to note that these two seemingly don't get along at all. I wonder if it's because Toriel knows what Noelle goes through. Like, maybe she noticed. But at the same time, it's very curious to note that they are both, like, not really good parents. In different regards, obviously, I think Carol is much worse. But Toriel is not a saint. And we'll get to it. Oh, believe me. Oh, believe me. This red string between these two? Oh, Chris, just so you know, I'm on your side in this battle. I am on your side. I downloaded a simulator of an Underfell battle so I can do like extremely difficult sans fights so I can like then fucking smoke him if I ever get a chance. But she's not as bad as Carol, at least so far. We don't know what's Carol's deal. She might turn out to be a bit more sympathetic in a way that's like, oh, woe is me, my daughter is gone, blah blah. But, you know, I'm not holding my breath. I still think like the way she's treating Noelle is like shit as fuck. It's very interesting how these two families mirror each other, especially since in chapter 3 from Tenna we find out that they were constantly together, especially in early years before Des went missing. And whatever happened with Des going missing, that was kind of like a cataclysm to, I think, both families falling apart, both between themselves and also as families. I think much more obviously it hit the Holiday family. I do believe that Carol was not always like this. I think she became kind of like this after Des went missing. Though we don't know when some of the Noelle's blogs took place, so maybe she was always like very, strict. But I still believe that like the version we see now, where like the fucking room goes cold when she enters, she was not always like that. I don't believe in it. So because of Des going missing, Carol becomes like that. Noelle is shattered, I believe, because that's her like older sister that she obviously like super loves and stuff like that. And especially with how often she kind of like mentions her. Like obviously it doesn't feel that often, but if you think about it, like all of the some sweepstakes blogs where she's mentioned, all of the cutscenes where Noelle mentions Des, or like she randomly like once mentioned this offhandedly in chapter 1, our second mention of this in the chapter to Chris. So like I think like to her it was like the closest probably person in this entire family. And Rudy, we don't know how it affected Rudy, but now he's in a hospital bed, probably dying from monster cancer or some bullshit. So, you know, I don't think it turned out good for him either. I don't think that's not going missing would have like cured his cancer, but still. And let's look at the Dreamer family, where I don't think the effects are as noticeable, but I have my own like conjectures about some of the events that might have transpired because of Death going. Let's start with those who were probably the least affected, the adults of the household, Toriel and Asgore. Asgore, in a lesser extent, I think the most unaffected, maybe not emotionally, obviously, but like lore-wise, was Toriel, because we don't really see any, hints towards her being affected about it and stuff like that. With Asgore, it's a bit more complicated in a way that's like there's a lot of shit we don't know, but it is highly speculated that whatever happened with Daz, he was there for it, or at least he couldn't stop it. Basically, like there's a very popular theory that whatever happened to Asgore to get fired was connected to Daz. Obviously, like, there's, like, always these fuck-ass memes about him running her over, but obviously I don't think that's the case. I've been speaking non-stop for almost, like, 40 minutes. I need a drink. So, whatever happened to Asgore when he was the chief of police was connected to Dez. I think it's more like the case of him. I genuinely don't know what it could be. For some time, I thought it was, something insignificant as him failing to find her, but the more I think about it, I think it was something quite huge. In a way that's like, it's maybe tragic. Because Chris doesn't want to read about it. I don't think that him failing to find this would be warranting that reaction. I think whatever happened, like, I don't know, was a bit more big than just not being able to find her. And the way that one monster in chapter 4, in front of the flower store, talks about Asgore before they find out that Chris is their child, is his child, like, it kind of warrants, like, what happened to him? Like, what was the catalyst of him being fired? I genuinely don't know. So, like, this is, I have some theories in a way that's like, once again, he did not run her over. They would not be friends. Because, like, he still works for Carol. If he ran over her daughter that made her probably like this, do you think she would be getting him a job and a subsidized rent? Hell fucking no! She would have taken that katana off her kitchen wall. She would have fucking sliced him in two, I swear to God. Like, I know it's a meme. I'm getting too heated. Ooh, but I got annoying quickly. I really hope it's not gonna be like an hour. And I'm not even halfway through. Just so you know, I'm like on the 5th point of my list. And it has like 6 more annotated. And like at least 10 more that I'm just holding in my head. God save us all. But yeah, whatever happened to Asgore got him fired. And that's how, like, probably Des' disappearance affected him. And Azriel was probably close friends with Des, just like Noel and Chris were at the time. The 4 of them hung out all the time, seemingly. So obviously the 2 families were affected by it. I just think that the divorce between Asgore and Toriel was probably, because of whatever happened with the case with Des and him. I have no proof of it. And I might be very wrong, but, that feels narratively fitting. Okay, and after talking about the holiday dreamer relationships, I think it's imperative to talk about the relationships between the family, like, inside of the family. So, like, between the dreamer household, right, inside of their household, inside of the holiday household, inside of their household. Because I think, like, most of the problems in this story, like, at least for, like, one of the main characters of this story, and arguably is the second most important character, maybe besides Susie, literally. Like, they are the kind of like hometown center of the narrative. So I think it's very important to really understand what is going on between them. So I think the easiest and hardest part to start is definitely Chris, because we know at the same time the most about them, from the fact that we are literally connected to Chris and we play like through their body. So I think like we see the most of the relationships between their family from them. Like, for example, the way they go to Asgore and Asgore gives them flowers to give to Toriel and then Toriel throws them out. Obviously, that's very telling of how fucking the worst they are. Genuinely, this guy, like, I love him, but he's destined to be the worst in every universe, it seems. Like, he got us turned gay at this point. Like, I don't think he works out with women anymore. But anyway, Chris, I think the central relationship of their world, like, from their perspective, would be actually their relationship with their brother. Like, you can argue that it's actually their relationship with Toriel, but I wouldn't agree. And we'll just end it at that. Well, obviously I'm gonna elaborate, but, I think it's very important to note how we see Chris interact with mentions of Azriel in a way that's like, like, for example, their castle town. Like, at first we kind of, like, I remember the consensus in the second chapter, at least in my circles, was that we don't really know 100% if Chris is jealous or, like, has some jealousy feelings, because we were also, like, very, how do I put it? We were very hell-bent on the fact that Chris, like, the narrator maybe, or like what is the narrator in the deltarune is another story. We're not gonna get into it, but let's just say like Chris tells us that they've taken enough and they're not gonna take more than $5 out of their brother's drawer, despite seemingly having like more items in there or more items for them to take. 100% not sure what else in that drawer. I don't think he left like all of his life savings in that drawer, but you know, maybe there's something valuable in there and Chris doesn't want to take it or whatever. But yeah, we were like kind of hell-bent on that detail, and we were like, okay, but what did Chris kill Des? And now they feel guilty in front of Azriel because Azriel was dating Des? Like, that was the level of serious in chapter 2, okay? And I'm not knocking it, you know, it's fun. I think I'm doing the same thing here with this world, but, you know, with the context of new chapter, it does become a bit sillier, maybe. But we can, like, from the way they interact with Susie in chapter 4, in the light world, both in the church and inside of their household, they kind of feel definitely, like, there's hinting to them feeling, like, very overshadowed by their brother. And, I mean, that, like, obviously it was also very much hinted to in chapter 2 and chapter 1. I'm not saying people didn't say that. Just that we didn't say that in my circles, and I turned out to be stupid, so, you know, whatever. But for sure, they're feeling, like, inferior to their brother, especially with how everyone, like, keeps mentioning him around Chris. So, like, most of the people you talk to in hometown, they're gonna mention Azriel. And they're gonna mention Azriel going to college, Azriel soon being home maybe, like, you know, obviously, like, the two parents in the household talk about it because that's their child coming home from college, but if you talk to any of the older kids, they're all gonna mention Azriel, which also makes sense, because, like, you know, they were friends with them, because they are all probably around the same age as Azriel. But at the same time, like, even some adults you talk to, like Kari's father, or I can't remember anyone off the top of my head. I think Alvin for sure mentions Azriel in the second chapter, maybe, or maybe the first one. I don't. No, the second chapter for sure. So, like, most of the people you talk to in hometown, they're gonna mention Azriel, and I do not imagine that to be, like, you know, the best feeling ever when they only. First of all, like, obviously they, Chris, miss their brother a lot. Like, we can tell that by the way they search up when the summer vacation is, as I mentioned before. So, for sure, they love their brother still dearly. But I cannot imagine going around this town and hearing only about him when you're probably going through your own horrors of an unimaginable scale. It does not feel good. Especially with the reminder that he's not here. Everyone talks about him. He's like the ghost of the town. And that's why I also think he parallels Des, but, like, in a different way. Like, everyone talks about Azriel, and we kind of feel him haunting the narrative of Chris's life. And we have the same with Des's, despite her, like, not being really mentioned outside of her family. We kind of feel like Noelle is still haunted by by Des, by Des's disappearance and stuff like that. Des's disappearance will never stop being, like, a funny string of words to me. So yes, for sure, Chris loves their brother, but they're feeling overshadowed and maybe a bit jealous about it. But at the same time, I do think that, like, I made fun of the Chris kills Des theory and Azriel, and feels guilty in front of Azriel right now. But I'm dead ass gonna say something very similar soon. So, like, you know that everything I make fun of is in good fun because we end up circling back to it. Because I think. No, I'm not gonna go on this tangent now. We're gonna wait for it. I'm gonna be, like, a big man, and I'm gonna make sure I'm following the structure of whatever this is. But anyway, moving on. Chris and their father, Asgore. We talked a bit about it. We talked about how seemingly, like, Chris doesn't see their father that often. Well, at least in a way that's, like, unless Chris is visiting him, he's probably not seeing Chris much. I'm not sure if this is. I don't think it's Toriel being like, don't fucking talk to your own kids. Because, like, she's been, like, very amicable with him out in the open. That's, like, one thing I'm gonna give to her. But every time they're out in the open and he does some weird ass, shit ass move of the most divorced man on this earth you've ever seen, and you physically retract into your own skull. That's how much cringe it is. She's still amicable with him. Like, think back to chapter 2. Think back to chapter 2 when she's riffing with Sans, our favorite, not so favorite anymore, Tumblr sexy man. I wonder what would happen to his status now. Do we crown him as like Tumblr sexy man that we all want to kill now? I think that fits him. Anyway, in the second chapter, when the two of them are riffing, having a good time, blah blah, Asgore, unannounced, completely out of the blue, he comes out and he starts like hitting on her again, and being like, "Don't forget your ex-husband." Oh my god, like physically, I have to close my eyes to like, you know, calm myself when I see that scene. And I'm someone who made my entire family watch Naruto with me when I was 8 years old, and he wiped his ass on the national TV. So, you know, I felt cringe before, and I still cringe so much when this guy comes up and goes, "Don't forget your ex-husband." That's how divorced he is, genuinely. And, like, she's still amicable with him. She's like, "Oh, Asgore, let's talk about this later. Yes, we'll catch up." Like, obviously she doesn't mean it, because she never catches up with him. I don't think they ever talk. Period. But, you know, like, she's not being like, "Hey, motherfucker, like, get off of me, like, get lost," whatever. Especially not in front of Chris, I think. Like, she still, obviously, does things that imply that they are not together, and she fucking hates his guts. But she doesn't do it out in the open, you know? That's the thing. And I think this is genuinely the case of Chris just, like, not really visiting anyone. They're shown not to be visiting anything. Genuinely, like, Rudy is surprised when they are visiting him. Noelle is surprised when they are talking to them. Other people don't really say, like, "Oh my god, like, we haven't talked in so long, and it's so weird that you're talking to us now." But people do mention that they are usually not this talkative, at least. So, you know, like, I wouldn't say they're the most outgoing, like, teenager in the hometown, so I don't think they're visiting their father that much. So they don't really have, like, that much of a relationship. It seems to be implied that they used to, like, do some bonding activities with their father and Azrael, but I don't know, it's not really elaborated much upon. It's more like a line that Asgore says, like, "Oh, we're gonna get around in the truck, like the good old times." That's the only, like, inkling of a hint towards a relationship between these three that we get. Not even these two, right? We can't even, like, really narrow it down to Chris and Asgore. We don't really know what their relationship, like, one-on-one is like. It seems like Azrael is even, like, connected to this relationship. So, you know, sucks. But I do think that Chris kind of feels bad for their father. Like, they do, like, give him an egg. they see his sad ass, divorced ass fucking fridge, and they give him an egg. And I think that's, like, a gesture of kindness towards their fatherly figure. But other than that, we don't really see much of their relationship. Like, obviously it's very sweet, because Asgore is a really sweet father, in my opinion. Like, yeah, he has his flaws, whatever. But I think he's a very sweet man, all things around. And no, he did not fucking run over Des with his fucking burger truck, or whatever. But the last relationship was, like, Chris. In the relationship I want to discuss is, like, definitely Chris and Toriel. Because I don't know, I think it's gonna be the case of, I love you because you raised me and you were kind to me, but I fucking hate you with, like, from how you ignored the problems I was going through. I 100% don't think that Toriel is the worst mother, whatever, but I do think that people are not really giving weight to what is happening inside of Chris's life when, like, Toriel is pulling all of these stunts. Like, obviously she deserves to have fun, and she's been divorced probably for forever, because seemingly the divorce happened a really long time, if it is connected to Des's disappearance. We don't actually know, because when we see Asgore and Toriel talk in the second chapter in Sansa's store, we actually get the line from Asgore being like, "We should tell Azriel." What the fuck are you telling? Because like clearly you've been divorced for a very long time, because the eraser board in Toriel's classroom says that Mrs. Toriel hasn't been erased in a really long time, and it is implied that their couch is used to being a bed. So, you know, it probably happened a pretty long time ago. So what the fuck are they telling? There was a really good series that, you know, it's not that they are telling they are getting divorced, it's that they are telling him that, you know, they're not living together anymore or whatever. Because it does seem like Asgore's living situation is pretty new. Like, I don't think he's been in business for like a fucking year and he's still not being able to fucking pay rent. Like, Carol would fucking beat his ass. I swear, that woman has this fucking hometown by the balls. And if there was like some guy who doesn't pay like yes, it's subsidized rent, but that what makes it worse, right? Like, you have to pay it to the city, and if the city doesn't get it, like, you're fucked, buddy. So I don't think it's been like, because deltarune, like, as we're experiencing it as a game, it takes place during fall. For sure Azriel didn't come for summer, and before that there was spring. So, like, for sure, like, he hasn't been around hometown for a year or maybe half a year. I think it's closer to a year, with how everyone is saying, like, oh, I hope he, like, didn't forget us. I hope he blah, 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 you know? So I think for sure he hasn't been home for a year. Because otherwise I don't think everyone would be remembering him this fondly. But then again, I don't know. I'm not the... As you can tell by the fact that this is my pastime, I am not very socially skilled, so I don't know. But yes, for sure, they, like, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibilities that Asgore only recently started living, like, separately from Chris and Toriel, and maybe that's what they want to tell him. Asriel, I mean. So, I don't know. Might be something to look into. But for sure, Toriel is not seeing what is going on with Chris. She's not seeing the full situation. She is blind to their circumstances. And it is literally the most on-the-nose metaphor in Chapter 3, Dark World, with ta-da! It's TV time! Thank you. Anyway. Mr. Antenna kidnaps Toriel. And I don't know, did she fucking drink before she went to bed? Why is she so, like, you know, such a heavy sleeper? Because there are literally horrors beyond our collective understanding happening right next to her. Like, first, Tenna fucking steals her, puts her in a gachapon bowl, and then puts her on the top of a tree, and then takes her down from the tree, and then gets her out of the gachapon, and then puts her down. Like, yeah, sure, that can be explained with magic. The magic is very soft, and he's doing it on purpose because he doesn't want to wake her up. And it's not like she's not incapable of waking up. On multiple occasions, Tenna is like, struts the fuck out that she's gonna wake up, and she's gonna see it all, and he's gonna be like, disappointing to her, or whatever. So, for sure, it's not impossible to think, like, okay, magic, whatever. But we literally fight the knight right next to her, and the knight tries to take her on 2 occasions. Because she's basically, like, fucking kidnapped by the knight, both before the battle, and then after the battle, after we script lose, like, the cutscene. Like, and she still doesn't fucking give a damn. Like, she's still sleeping, like, she doesn't care. Genuinely, it's so weird to me. And I don't know, like, it's the most on-the-nose metaphor for her having her eyes closed to the problems that Chris is going through. And, like, that their relationship encapsulated. She's overbearing, and she is protective, but at the same time, she is easily letting go of that, by the way. Like, in Chapter 4, like, think about it. When we didn't call her to, like, for her to take us home after school, or in the first chapter on Thursday, she's like, oh my god, Chris, you're grounded because you didn't fucking call me. And she only, like, lets it go when she finds out Chris has a friend. Ooh, so cute. But otherwise, it feels like she doesn't care, at least in fourth chapter. Think about it. Like, if I was Chris, I would be pissed as fuck. Honestly, like, the shit. Like, obviously, it's all, like, kind of scripted for them specifically because they're clearly in cahoots with the Knight and Carol. But still, you know, if I thought my mother was in danger because the Knight opened the fucking... But then again, genuinely, I don't know. I don't know if they knew Toriel wasn't there. I think they knew she wasn't there, but there's, like, a sliver of a possibility that they didn't know that she wasn't there, and they were genuinely worried for her. And I would be pissed if I was Chris in this situation. But, you know, let's put that aside. Let's assume they knew that she wasn't in danger, that she wasn't, like, you know, there. So, but then again, like, why would they stress out Susie so much? Oh my god, I don't know. Because, like, clearly for Susie, Toriel, like, is explained to be a pretty big, I don't know, mother figure, parental figure, whatever. So, like, for Susie, when we say, for example, my mother could be there, like, you know, I would be having the same reaction as, like, you know, that's a very valid reaction. So, like, I don't know why they're stressing Susie out if they know she's not there. I mean, they're stressing her out in multitudes of other ways, so, like, you know, I'm not putting too much thought about it. Their motives are, I think, enigmatic even to them at this point. Genuinely. So, like, you know, I'm not gonna fester on it. But for sure, like, she was so overbearing in the first chapter, she was so overbearing on Thursday, then Friday comes. On Friday, her fucking tires get slashed, and she has to have, like, another kid over because it's not fucking safe outside and it's already the night. And then literally the next day, after her fucking tires got slashed and she didn't let this, like, girl go, and she was like, you should stay over if your parents let you. Like, I don't know, the way she then behaves on Saturday in chapter 4, it's just fucked up, honestly, genuinely. Because think about it, she says she goes to the store, she has the keys, because if I try to get into the Dreamer household, Chris is like, I don't have keys, so, like, we have to go find my mother at choir practice. So they go to the choir practice, there's a dark world, they obviously don't know she's not there. And by the way, I was very curious if you can go and look for her in Sansa's store, or at least, like, look through the door and, like, see she's there. But no, like, the store is closed. There's no indications of someone being in there besides, like, the glowing window. But, you know, it glows all the time, I think. So, like, we have no idea she's not, you know, somewhere, like in the church. Because there's no indication that she's not in the church. She didn't tell us anything. She told us she's gonna be at the church. And then we find out she wasn't at the church. She was with the fucking convenience store guy. This fuck ass. And because of that, and it's, by the way, like, 1 in the morning, by the time Chris and Susie leave the chapter 4 Dark World. So it's, like, you know, really, really late. Like, I think their curfew is, like, before the sunset, at least for Chris, for sure. Like, we don't know what's happening with Susie and her family situation, so, like, you know, we don't know. But for Chris, for sure, like, I think their bedtime has got to be before, like, the sunset. And, like, fall, let's say, like, the sun sets at around, like, I don't know, 6, 7. They are, like, if it's 6 hours, it's, like, 2, 4... They're missing for 6 hours, for 6 or 5 hours. And it's, like, deep into the night. Because it's, like, 1 in the morning. That's literally deep into the night. They show up. She doesn't really react to the fact that they are home so late. Because she's having just so much fun with the convenience store guy. And she's drunk as fuck. And judging by Chris's reaction, not for the first time, And probably not for the last time, because we also hear from Rudy that she was like a beast in college. And I remember I was like talking to one of my friends, and they were like, "Do you think Toriel started drinking after the divorce?" I was like, maybe it got worse after the divorce, but for sure she's always been kind of like that. Like, you know, he tells about the time she got shit-faced drunk and threw a key lime pipe at him. And in the alarm clock dialogue from Undertale, and I am using Undertale evidence, she is told by Flowey to be like drinking too much or whatever. No, it wasn't by. Yeah, it was by Flowey. It was by Flowey. He says that she got shit-faced drunk on New Year. So for sure, I think maybe her problem wasn't as bad as they weren't getting divorced and they were having like a good time as Tanner remembers. Maybe she didn't drink that much. But for sure, in my personal, professional gamer opinion, she got worse after the divorce. It would just make, like, sense. Like, yeah, maybe she's not broken up about being divorced to this guy, but I still think, like, getting divorced, like, delivering the news to your fucking kids, saying you don't love their father anymore, and they are not at fault, and them probably still feeling at fault, and you're probably feeling it. I'm not saying it's 100%, but narratively it would make sense. Narratively. Let's put it that way. So I think Chris has maybe not resentment towards her per se, but for sure some sort of frustration. I don't know how their teenage angst is like manifesting, because I for sure hated my mom. I love you, Mom. Not anymore. It was just teenage hormones. I love you. You're the best. But for sure, maybe they are resenting her. Maybe they feel like some sort of like frustration. For sure, with the like Sans bullshit, they're frustrated as fuck. I think that's clear as day. But maybe with her drinking problem, they're just in general like pretty dissatisfied with. Like for sure, for them that's embarrassing, especially in front of Susie. I think like Susie has her own reaction where I think it's pretty obvious her parents are alcoholics. Because she immediately flees, and they're probably like, and yes, Toriel is not a violent alcoholic. But like when you have someone violent who's like into alcohol, they might be fun one time, and they might be like the coolest person the other time. So like I think for Susie, she has someone in her family who drinks and probably is abusive, and she got scared of Toriel, or got her like vision of Toriel shattered. Because of that. Once again, there's no fucking harm in getting plastered and having some fucking time, especially on a hot girl summer, okay? It's not hot girl summer when the game takes place, but it's besides the point. I think that's fine, I've done it. You've done it. If you're over 18 or 21, if you're watching this in States, whatever. You've done it if you're over 18, probably. But, it still sucks, because imagine being a child and not really knowing that, maybe there are people who don't really, like, throw maybe, like, I don't know, fucking bricks at you when they get drunk, and then laugh at it the other moment. And then maybe like sob and apologize. Like, alcoholics, they can be really unpredictable. People on alcohol can be really unpredictable. And some of them are gonna be like the biggest, like, kindest people ever. Like, for some people, alcohol opens their soul. But there are people who are abusive. And you cannot blame this poor girl for thinking, oh man, that's fucked up, when she sees like Toriel being drunk. Because she doesn't know. And that's not her place to know. If she's uncomfortable with it, that's her place. Especially as a fucking child. And I think it's very obvious she's uncomfortable by how Toriel is behaving just as much as Chris is. But for Susie, it's like an eye-opener. Like, literally, by the way, like, if you go back to it, like, I think Susie's eyes, they show up from under her, like, bangs, but Chris turns their face away. So for them, this is expected, and they feel embarrassed by this. But to Susie, she can't believe her eyes. She has to look closer, stuff like this. So for sure, I think there's some, bad blood, let's call it that, between Chris and Toriel, even if they don't think that this is like bad blood, let's call it that, or maybe that, or if in Toriel's case they don't, she doesn't see like that this is happening, she's literally blind to it happening, you know, it's just a recipe for disaster, especially with how, like, once again, I'm gonna repeat myself, but she's so overbearing. Like, I didn't really like Toriel, like, in Undertale because of how overbearing she is. I don't like overbearing mother figures. I have my own mommy issues, and we're not gonna get into it. But for sure, I didn't like Toriel for how, like, you know, too much she was. Like, she would take our hand, she would walk us through everything. I always felt like that's very unnecessary and I don't need it. But for Chris, I think they're probably feeling the same way, especially since, like, people are, well, Susie is mocking them for, like, you know, going to school like hand in hand with their mother. We don't know 100% they're embarrassed by their mother, but you know, maybe. And generally, I don't really have much to say about Azrael and his relationship with his parents, their parents, I guess. Um, because we don't really see much about it. Like, we hear a lot of anecdotes from Toriel from when he was like a kid, and we hear a lot from Azrael's friends that he was kind of like, you know, a bit of a golden boy and whatever. But we don't really, like, obviously they all love their child, they still mention him all the time, but we don't really see like their relationships through it. We get like fun anecdotes, but none of them are really evidential of what their relationship might be now, or even what it was besides like a very good parental child relationship. By the way, I don't know if I mentioned this, I'm remembering about it right now, but it's a very fun discussion on whether the deltarune world has more humans or more monsters, or is it like 50-50. I don't think it's 50-50, and I actually think that humans are as a minority in this world. I don't have solid proof on it, but it just feels right, you know. And it also feels right, especially after like Undertale had like monsters as a minority, so maybe that makes sense. And I think the last thing to break down fully the Dreamer household is Toriel and Asgard. And we talked a lot about it. I talked about how I have no idea what the custody looks like, why the fuck Toriel has the house but Asgard doesn't. And how amicable Toriel is to Asgard, and how Asgard is the most divorced man ever. So I don't think there's much more for me to add, besides once again reiterating that yes, Toriel hates him, and she's not really subtle about it, especially in her own house where Chris gives her the flowers, and she throws them out, and then they come back and they can just like see it literally in the bin. It's not like they're not using the bin. Who the fuck does not use the bin inside of their own house? Like, obviously they fucking see the flowers, so she's not subtle about it. Like, she doesn't do it like out in the open, but she's not subtle about it. Once again, Asgard needs to have gay sex. That's all I'm gonna say on the topic. Dreamers, debunked. Moving on. Holidays. By the way, I have no idea if I even look good in this camera, or if all of this looks good in this camera. You have to bear with me, genuinely, because I just need to get this out of my system, and this is like literally the only way I can do it. Because I tried at some point to do like voiceovers, but this is like much easier for me to just put a camera on, put all of this on, and just like ramble on. So, you know, whatever. Let's talk about holidays. We already talked about how like this experience really affected like the whole family, but I think it's also and like we touched on the relationships of them like all over, but I think their relationships are even like, because I don't know, is Rudy afraid of his own wife? how just because like by Noel's reactions to her presence and by just general vibes we're getting from her, I don't think she's like that good of a mother. I don't think so. Like obviously it could be like a misleading thing like they did with Asgore in Undertale, but I don't think so. I think she's set up to be like a cold person, and I think the subversion in her case is not gonna be that she's actually not this cold person and she's actually really nice and we're just misunderstanding the situation. I think she's genuinely like that, like we how we see it, but I think she has her sympathetic reasons for how she turned out like this. Not, justifications or excuses, but more like, lore. But yes, it's just kind of weird with how, different the dynamic is between Rudy and Noelle and Carol and Noelle. It's just so weird that he doesn't seemingly like stand up for her. Like obviously he says not that obviously he says now that I'm not here or there, right, in the manor, Noelle is having more difficulties with her mother, or like her mother is being more hard on Noelle as he puts it. But I don't know, is this like paralleling how like Toriel doesn't see like how, tortured their child is? Like, doesn't Rudy see just like how much of a ball of nerves Noelle is? And like obviously like she had a change as after Death disappeared. And obviously like possibly Rudy just thinks it's now part of her. But I don't know, it's giving blindness. It's giving blindness because like how genuinely how I just don't understand. This is like such a dissonance between, we expected her to be like sort of mean, but the way she was presented, she was terrifying. Oh my god. Like, yeah, she was set up as like, a strict mother figure, probably pretty hard on Noelle, but like maybe that's because she's a mayor. No, she shows up, the room drops like minus 20 degrees. Oh my god, like that's insane. Like she was set up to be like not, she was being set up, but the way it paid off, oof, oof. So like I don't know. There's something there. I think we should keep an eye out. Obviously, like Rudy is also set up kind of like to die. He's not getting better. What am I supposed to say? Like, am I supposed to lie to you all and say, oh yeah, he's gonna be fine? No, he's probably gonna die. I'm sorry to be the one to break the news. But yes, like, we should probably see more of the relationship between, like, the three of these. Because we see, like, I guess separate relationships between, like, Rudy and Noelle and Carol. But, like, what's up between these two? Like, I want to see them interact because Rudy still stands up for his wife, I guess. Like, when Toriel says, like, your wife, he corrects her and says, Carol. And Toriel ignores it and says, your wife. But, he still, like, corrected her, so probably it's not like they're, like, the worst enemies. So, like, I'm just curious, I can only speculate. There's so many directions this can, like, take, But in general, like, Noelle and Rudy, they have, like, a very good relationship. They, like, hang out. Noelle visits her father all the time. He, like, eggs her on to be a bit more outgoing, to be more, brave and stuff like that. So, for sure they have, like, a good relationship. And I think Noelle will be like very fucked up by his death. Like that's 100% gonna happen. Like imagine losing yet another family member. Like your family is literally like half as small as it was initially. Like that's fucked up as hell. And you're only left with your cold mother who like constantly terrifies you. Oh my god. We are heading for a crash out that was not seen in centuries. That's all I'm gonna say. And that leads us to the relationship between these two, because clearly, not all is not well. All is not well. That's all I'm gonna say. Because like we knew she's a pretty strict mom once again. Like Noelle doesn't want to bother her while she's at work. In her blog post, she says that she can't be loud or cry because her mom will come and unplug the console. So like for sure, like no, Carol was being set up to be like a bit of an iron fist. But what we got was like, I don't know, I expected, like, okay, so I had a bingo for chapter 3 and 4, and almost none of it came true, so make of it what you will. Take what you will from this video with that context. But one of the things that I did predict is that we will meet Carol, and I mean, that was obvious. That was heading there, But a lot of people did think that we're gonna see her only at the festival. But I did think we're gonna see her in chapter 4 specifically. And we did see her, but the thing is, I was still surprised. She showed up. I was like, oh my god. I was like this. It was like, oh, what is going on? Like, I anticipated that. And, when the music cut, I was like, what is going on? Like, I didn't even think it could be her because I didn't think that she would be presented like this way. So, for sure, like, she is a terror, seemingly, in a way that she treats Noelle, because, like, Noelle, like, is shaking the whole time. So, well, not literally, right? But, like, you can tell she's very shaken up. She's, and I mean, people came up with, a lot of explanations for it as well. Like, obviously, you're seeing some, like, random girl you never saw before, or if you saw her before, probably in, like, Judy shit, So, like, not the best impression of her, right? And she's sitting there, playing the guitar of your supposedly missing or deceased older daughter. Like, obviously you would crush out. But the thing is, that's not why she's crushing out. She is crushing out because Chris called her and said, Susie got the guitar. I mean, that's like literally like in the text, right? Like Chris calls someone on their phone, says Susie got the guitar, and the person is like, I'll be right there. And who unexpectedly, out of her schedule, comes home? Carol. She's not crushing out because this is the guitar of her deceased daughter. She's crushing out because someone is getting to the code to the shelter. Need I say more? So I don't think we can, like, narratively, you can look at it that way from a perspective of some characters who do not know about this connection, right? But we, as someone who, like, looks at the narrative as it is in the game, as we, like, see these events happen, like, she's not crashing out because the guitar is of her deceased daughter or wherever. She's crashing out because there's the code inside of there. And, I mean, we can't excuse it, so, like, I think she is gonna be, like, kind of a villain, antagonistic figure, at least in, like, Noelle's life. And it's also pretty clear that she has to stand up, like, Noelle has to stand up for herself and, talk off to her mother. But I don't think it's gonna be, like, that simple. I think it's gonna be much more complicated because of the connection between Carol, Chris, and probably the knight. I don't have a string here, but maybe I should add that right now. We're making connections as we go. This is how deep it goes. You're gonna witness the glorious process of me putting my strings up. Monumental occasion. I swear. Okay, we have the connection now. So for sure, like, you know, she's gonna be antagonistic. I don't think she's gonna be, like, redeemed in any way. It's gonna be an Adalia situation if you ever saw the old house. That's all I'm gonna say about it. I do, however, think that Carol will have her own sympathetic reasons for what she's doing. Like, not sympathetic in a way that's like, you know, oh, I understand and forgive. They're gonna be sympathetic in a way that's like, that's fucked up, but I don't know what I would have done in this situation. We'll get what I mean. We'll get to what I mean when I get to my even more speculative side. If this doesn't seem like that speculative, just wait. We'll get to my crazy, crazy theories, and one of them is gonna be like really good, really good. I don't know if it's actually that good, but I like it, so we'll take it. So the relationship between these two are probably extremely, like, you know, strained. Actually, isn't there something in the weird root with Carol? Oh my god! Wait, hold on! I forgot about it. So I'm gonna jump to it. And I don't know, like, to me, it sets her up, like, it confirms her as, like, antagonist, okay? I'm literally Googling, like, to watch the ending, so I can, like, confirm what I'm thinking about right now, but give me a second. So, I watched it, and I wouldn't say that there is something very explicit about her knowing what's going on with Noelle and Chris, and, like, all our fuckery connected to it. I don't know. I don't know. It doesn't cement her as a villain yet, I'll give her that. It's not explicit at all. But I have a vibe from it, like, I don't know. Or maybe it's actually like her worrying that Noelle is being dragged into this now. I don't know. We'll see. So there are, you know, possibilities for her to branch out even after this, like, villainous, you know, introduction, whatever. Because maybe she has redeeming qualities, like, she's gonna probably, like, protect Noelle from us and, you know, this fucker. In the weird route. But, you know, we'll see how it plays out. Another thing is, as I watched the chapter 4 ending, I did notice there's a blood stain once again as a soul. So if I don't remember what I said in that, like, section anymore because I said a lot. But if I ever said something about blood disappearing and then not being in the chapter 4 ending, disregard that because the blood is still there. So 100% the initial blood stain is from, I don't know, soul ripping. Is the test run theory actually correct? In case you don't know, test run theory is a theory that Guster somehow, like, did a run in Chris's body. But once again, the question is, are we Chris's soul or are we, like, a separate soul? I still believe in the summoning of us, so we are our own separate entity and Chris probably doesn't have a soul. But I don't know. I'm less, you know, certain of it. So take what you will. Coming back to Carol. My thing is, I think she's gonna have sympathetic reasons in a way that's like. But let's go back to holidays. So Carol and Noelle, very strange relationship. You can see it, like, as soon as Carol appears, the aura is just, like, vibe completely off. So for sure they don't have, like, a greatest relationship. Once again, I'm not sure what the relationship would be because we don't really see much of other holidays besides Noelle. We can do a lot of guesswork to, like, what's happening with each of the family members, but that would be that guesswork because, like, we don't really know much about them. I do have, however, I don't think if I've mentioned this, but I do think that piano in the dining room of the holiday manor was initially bought for Des probably to play, and I have my reasons to believe it all. I have my reasons to believe it all, and we'll get to it. For now, that's like a pin for you to keep in mind, as we go along. Uh, and I think since we don't really see the rest of the holidays much yet, I think it would be more wise to also like mention once again that the kids of the households were seemingly really close, judging by Noel's reminiscing of all of four of them hanging out, and also her blog posts, and the IC sighting one. It's quite clear that Des, Noel, Chris, and Azrael, they all hung out, and it's not too far-fetched to speculate that just how Noel and Chris were close as peers. I would imagine that December and Azrael were also quite close peers. Probably up until Des disappeared, honestly, because we see her room. And it's presumably has been mostly untouched. Well, since she disappeared. So we see a lot of reminders of Azrael in there. So it's probably it would have been like peak friendship for all of them, between all four of them, when Des disappeared, and that's how all shit went off. And that's when, shit hit the fan, so that's kind of all we can really surmise from, the information we get, that they were all, close friends. Everything else would be a speculation, or, borderline fanfiction, because we really don't really have that much information. We get some of the character of both Des and Azrael through going through their belongings. We can tell that Azrael was probably sort of a dork. He listened to Christian ska and as a child went to church all the time. And December really does seem like, the rebellious, cool older sister that got away with a lot of things, probably. And I do think that she, by the way, got a lot of things, as presents, despite her rebellion. She has a lot of instruments in her room, and presumably she probably played those, and all of them seem quite expensive. A violin is not cheap. I think she has a violin, and what else was there? There was some sort of wind instrument, but I don't remember now. But for sure, those things are expensive, so obviously she couldn't have bought it with her probably allowance, because I don't know if they get allowance, but basically my point is, I believe Carol bought them for her, and she probably bought a lot of things for her, and despite the rebellious thing, maybe that's why Des even rebelled even further and did whatever happened that led to her disappearance. Who knows? That's just a speculation. But something to think on. And while we're on the topic, I think it's just the right time to introduce the thesis of my argument, and it's a very obvious connection between the red line, between Des and the Knight, because I know it's the most popular assumption. It might not even be right. It might be someone else. It might be Carol, I don't believe it's Carol personally, and I'll get to why, but I just it makes the most sense. It was immediately the first thing I thought about. As soon as I saw the Roaring Knight at the end of chapter 3, I was screaming, December holiday? That's you? Oh my god, I had no questions about it. It was immediately like, you cannot see because I put the strings over it, but like, the antlers, like obviously they don't look like the antlers that the Holiday family has, but that would like, cross out all of them because they all have the same antlers. Look at them. And none of them look exactly like the knight's ones, but the knight has like deer antlers. Like you can also not see it because of the tape, but believe me, it's there. Okay, I don't know if you can, how clearly you can see what I'm trying to point out here, but they have antlers, and I know this is insane, kind of, but their sword, when we first see it, I was literally screaming, "That's a wiffle bat," because it looks like a baseball wiffle bat, whatever. Especially as soon as they hold it up like this, like when they like swing it around, it does look much more like a sword. But I don't know, just like the first position. I'll try. I'll add it in post. Disregard me. But for sure, like it does look like a baseball bat. Like obviously that could be a cope. That could be just like how that particular sword got drawn. But we get so many references in chapter 2, the chapters that should come like right before chapter 3. Like obviously we don't really think about it as one continuous timeline or one continuous experience anymore, because we had to wait like for 4 years almost, like for the new chapters. So we don't think about it as an experience that should be played right after the other. A lot of people probably didn't replay chapter 1 and chapter 2 before starting their chapter 3 save, especially with all of the things that can happen, like in chapter 2 specifically. Like, obviously people didn't replay those to get all of the context that should come before. They were just excited to play chapter 3 and chapter 4 to get ahead of the spoilers. And I did the same! I did the same! I'm not judging anyone. I'm just saying that sometimes because of that, we forget that it's a continuous experience and we should experience one after the other. And in chapter 2, there are so many references to baseball, to death, and specifically in connection to death. I mean, I wouldn't say specifically in connection to death, but we get baseballs and, Noel comments on the strange moon, and in the same room we get death, hints. And before this, we found out that Des played wiffle ball. Wiffle bat? Wiffle ball? Yes, if it's a sport, it should have the ball at the end. Like, basketball. I'm a jockey ton, okay? Don't sue me. But for sure, I think, like, we should not, like, for me, it was, like, because of that, I was like immediately screaming like December holiday, because it does look like a bat. It could be obviously like Carol's katana, whatever, because she has like a katana above her kitchen. But I don't know. It could be possible. I'm not knocking it. I'm not even saying like I'm 100% correct. If anything, these chapters humbled me as a as someone who loves doing speculations, because so many of the things I guessed and we as a community guessed, I kind of didn't come true. Like some of the most like insane ones, like fucking Gerson coming back and being dead and coming back as a Darkner. Shout out to Jar Jar J. Like what the fuck, being so right. So for sure these chapters humbled me, so I'm not saying I'm 100% correct, but you can't blame me for assuming it's the December holiday as like, the most mysterious person probably of this entire narrative, as someone who we never saw, we never spoke to, she's constantly only alluded to. Sometimes she's not even like, sometimes it's so easy to, skip the mentions of her, because I spoke to so many people who were like, oh, I didn't even know there was someone like December Holiday in the game before chapter 3 and 4. For some people, they first like even noticed. Like, I had a friend who straight up missed a cutscene. Like, she was not paying attention to a cutscene, and she missed a mention of this because of that. And she like played chapter 2 and then she started chapter 3, and she was like, who the fuck is December Holiday? Does Noel have a sister? And I was like, oh my god. So, it's not that she's not mentioned, it's just that she's mentioned so little and so far apart sometimes that you can easily miss it, especially if you're playing the weird route, if you know what I mean. But let's get back on track, right? So, my proposition to you is for this video to assume that I am correct and December is, the Roaring Night. Obviously, like, the Roaring Night has a lot of mystique around it. Like, besides the antlers, we don't really understand much about them. They don't speak, like, at all. They just, smile and be freaky. Like, the first time we see them, they're crying. Like, what is going on with this dude, Dude is gender neutral because, like, whatever. I also don't think it's like December. Like, she's gonna take off the helmet and it's gonna be like December Holiday inside of there. No, I think it's something like terrifying and horrific beyond our comprehension happened to December Holiday, and because of that, she came back wrong and she became the knight. And my thing with the knight is that, like, I don't know, the holes in the hands, right? Right? Like, I'm not crazy. Like, we don't even know if it's Gaster, but, like, if we assume it is Gaster, like, there is a connection. But it's so flimsy, I didn't even put it up, so, like, disregard it. I'm just pointing it out in case you were gonna point it out first and think that you're smart, but actually, I already thought about that. No, I'm kidding. Point out things. I love it. But the thing is, with the Roaring Night also, as soon as we see them, we're also, like, immediately... Well, not immediately, we don't know that because, like, Okay, let's start small. What do we know about the Roaring Night? We see them in the chapter 3 ending. They are trying to steal Toriel for some reason. That one I still am not really clear on what I'm supposed to take away from. Like, why Toriel specifically? She's not really that special. Is this some sort of maybe punishment for Chris disobeying something? Because it is quite clear that Chris and the Knight, they work together, because Chris, they deliberately lower their attack against the Knight, and they're basically, like, useless in this game unless you want to farm TP or use items, because their attack is, like, does nothing, and the only act they have is hold your breath, and you can only do it once, and then for the rest of the fight you have, like, a speed boost. So they're not particularly trying to be useful in this fight. And the thing is, they only start doing some damage after, like, Ralsei and Susie go down, so after the Knight targets their friends. So, not sure what to make of it, because Chris has all sorts of fuckery related to the damage they deal in chapter 3, actually, and we're gonna get to it because it's quite interesting. And I think in general, this is a pretty good moment to discuss, like, what the fuck is happening in general with the damage that Chris deals in chapter 3, because not only is it weird in the Knight fight, it's also weird in the Tenna fight, because if you don't know, if you do this word route and you get the Shadow Mantle, if you do damage against Tenna, you do triple the damage you usually would as Chris if you attack Tenna. And I mean, obviously, on the sword route, as you get to the shelter, you encounter Tenna, who says that he fulfilled his part of the deal, that whatever he had with Chris, and we'll get to that because I have some thoughts, because it's very weird to me what is going on in chapter 3, Dark World. But for sure, I think. Mm, For sure, I think maybe Chris is like mad at Tana for revealing that, or I don't know. I genuinely don't know, for leaving that game in, for giving more hints to the player, for giving the player like the ability to still do the secret night fight, because it's basically impossible without the shadow mantle. But believe me, we'll get there. We'll get there. But for now, let's return to the knight. So with the knight, we have established that the knight is most probable, in my personal, professional, theoretical opinion, is December holiday. I'm not gonna get into like every possible details that might allude to this being the knight. I will say, you know, I will, however, say that it just makes narrative sense for me, okay? And once again, it may be completely wrong. We might be off our fucking rockets, but, for example, we saw that Chris might be the knight. They weren't the knight, but they were, like, working with the knight. It might have been, like, a bit of a twist on what we thought would happen, but, it still kind of happened. So for sure, I think it's not, the connection between December and, the night is not accidental. That's all I'm gonna say. So even if this turns out not to be the night, in any capacity, I think she's gonna be connected to the night in some way. And like, in my personal opinion, like, what happened with Des is what happened with her disappearance probably kind of killed her. Like, I'm 100% sure she's not coming back. That's all I'm gonna say. Like, it just doesn't seem likely to me. I think it's gonna be like Azrael's situation, where we might see her like gain lucidity and come back and have her final words to the characters. But I don't think she's coming back. If she is, I just don't think that, like, I don't think that's what's gonna happen. That just doesn't feel, like, obviously it doesn't have to be one-to-one with Undertale, but I think, like, it could be more in the Azrael kind of, like, plane where he was in Undertale. Obviously with Flowey, actually, now that I think about it, because Flowey was basically the main antagonist of Undertale, and Roaring Knight seems to be set up as the main antagonist of deltarune, and Azrael Dust Connection and all that bullshit. So like, maybe there's something to look into. But once again, it's conjecture. It's like a cope at best. One interesting thing about Chapter 3, Secret Boss Against the Night, is that we find a dark crystal behind the night. And it kind of implicates that the knight is the one giving out these crystals to the secret bosses. And with Jevil, I think it's very straightforward. Same with Gerson. I think, they were just given the crystals. With Spamton, it's a whole fucking thing. We'll get to Spamton. This motherfucker is throwing like so many wrenches into my series. And chapter 3, Dark World, was opened by Chris, and the knight seemingly arrives only by the end of the chapter 3. So, I don't think they just had an ability to give someone a dark shadow crystal yet. And I think the shadow crystal we get from them was actually meant for Ramp, which is why he's on this board as well. Obviously, it's kind of self-explanatory people think he might have been the secret boss of the chapter if the knight was the one to open the fountain, because the ramp, ramp is the one who shows up near the secret boss route adjacent locations, right? Like, he's the one who encourages us to play the game. He's the one who encourages us to seek freedom again, which is, the freedom motif. So, he ties into it. But once again, I think because Chris is the one who opened the dark world in chapter 3, Ram never gets the opportunity to meet the knight and get the shadow crystal and get corrupted, because I think that's what's happening with the dark crystals. I think shadow crystals, they're called shadow crystals, I'm sorry. That's what's happening with shadow crystals. They corrupt their host, let's say, because think about it, like, these two are fucked up. We'll get to Spamton. He's not corrupted by a shadow crystal, and that's throwing the wrench into my entire thing, but we'll get to him. But Jevil, for sure, he's been, like, probably changed by the shadow crystal, because there was, as Sean, like, explains to us, there was a point in time where Jevil was, like, a normal Darkner, like a very powerful Darkner, but a normal one. But then something opened his eyes to the truth or whatever, and now he imagines freedom differently, and now he's locked in a cell because of that. So, for sure there was, like, a switch in behavior in Jevil, and I think from the fact that what we observe with Gerson, someone who never used a shadow crystal, we can presume that the shadow crystal is probably what led to the change in behavior of the secret bosses. For now, we're literally only talking about Jevil, because chapter 3 doesn't really have a secret boss. We have the secret fight with the knight, but I wouldn't call it a secret boss. It's a secret boss fight, I guess, but not a secret boss. See, this game never fails to amaze me, because we have, like, 4 adjacent situations, but none of them really compare. None of them follow the same structure, because think back to it. Spamton, when we give Sean the shadow crystal we got from Spamton, we seemingly say, or Sean says to us, that Spamton found the shadow crystal inside of the Spamton Neo body. Can a shadow crystal immediately corrupt you? Maybe. But then again, Spamton was fucked up. He does all of the bullshit on the weird route, also seemingly without a shadow crystal. Like, he leads us to the Snowgrave spell and, teaches us basically the Snowgrave spell. He does that without the shadow crystal, so he's just fucked up in the head. And obviously this is connected to whoever he's talking on the phone, which we can presume might be Gaster? Question mark? We don't really know. I mean, Spamton knows something about the knight, because he gets threatened by Chris inside of his shop when he brings up the knight. And back then we saw that, the knight kind of, like, scared Spamton, but we also knew about the shadow crystal situation, so, like, it was kind of weird, but, whatever. But now it seems like he knows about the knight, and Chris was like, shut up, bitch, like, I'm gonna fuck you up if you say another word. And Spamton starts screaming, being like, I'm sorry. What it says, I am not sure. I have a couple of copes, but, maybe Spamton was, like, about to say something way too familiar. Like, there's so many jokes about, like, Chris coming out into the shelter and connecting to the shelter Wi-Fi, right? But, like, I think Spamton was basically, like, about to do the same kind of expose about Chris accidentally. Like, Maybe because, Spamton doesn't have a shadow crystal yet, he doesn't know the metaphysical situation of their, of their position. And what I mean by that is, I don't think he knows they're in the game and there's something like above that and whatever. And I don't necessarily think the rest of the secret bosses, like specifically Javel, thinks the same thing. Because I don't think anyone besides maybe us and Gaster are aware this is like a game of sorts. Like, Gaster on maybe more meta level, right? Like, because maybe he doesn't know it's a game, but maybe he's like creating a device to connect us to something in his, universe, whatever. And it's also not like the Darkners don't know their toys. Like, they're pretty open, especially in after chapter 3 reveals that Darkners are like, objects. The moment we have between Susie and Ralsei. Like, it's pretty obvious they all know they're not real. They bring up memories of something that happened in real life when they weren't really aware or conscious, and they're aware that they are not particularly conscious or, whatever, not real, let's say, right? They all know that. So what's up with Spamton? I have no idea. Maybe Sean is trolling us. Maybe they're trolling us. Maybe they're saying that bullshit just to like throw us out. Obviously, I don't believe that. I don't think Sean would be like that. I think Sean and Ralsei are one and the same, where they know a lot and they just don't say it, but they don't lie. I don't believe that Ralsei has ever lied to us. He has avoided saying things that he thought would hurt us, but he never lied. He would dance around the subject, but he wouldn't, outright say something that's not true. I think same applies more or less to Sean. So I don't think Sean was lying to us when they said that Spamton found, the shadow crystal inside of the Spamton Neo body. But what it says, I have no idea, because think about it, because that body, was it like a test of some sorts? And if it is a test, what for, Because it's just weird. Why not give it directly? Why not? Because it seems like to Gerson it was given directly, and we can assume the same would probably happen to the rest of them. So, like, why hide it inside of that body? Or was it, like, destined for someone else, and, like, Spamton just kind of, like, fit into that mold by accident, It's a mess, I'll be honest. Spamton is, like, decidedly still one of the most mysterious fucking creatures inside of this entire board. Like, we know so much about him, and yet still nothing. It's incredible, honestly. And also, like, Spamton is obviously connected to Tana, in a very divorced way. They definitely had, like, a very messy gay breakup. It was not pretty. Tana is still fucked up over it. I think an interesting detail that we sometimes forget about is that seemingly the shadow mentals that we get from Iram, and Iram seems to be the shadow mental, like, they look like what a shadow mental would look like. At first I thought they kind of looked like a moss, but now that I think about it, it looks like a cape. It looks like a mantle. So, did they steal it? Or are they the mantle, and by defeating them, we kind of like, it's like the secret bosses, we defeat them, and we get something from them that is technically them, which is what was confirmed by the Spamtana cutscene, when, if you have, like, the puppet's car or the deal maker in your inventory during one of the optional cutscenes in the TV world, you can see Spamton get out of your inventory. So they're there. They are the object that we get. So maybe the mantle that we defeat is the same way, because also if you have no available slots for whatever Spampton gives you, he can go to another chest outside of the initial room where you defeated him. So maybe it's the same with Iram. Maybe they are the mantle, or supposed to represent the mantle, whatever. And by defeating them, we kind of get them. So, and also, while we're talking about Iram, they are connected to the friend, and friend is connected to Gesser, by the way. We'll get to the friend. But what the fuck is going on with the shadow mantle? You know, like it's supposed to be. And also, who stole it from Sean? Was it Chris? I don't think so. Because also, we play in the Tana Dark World, with the to get the mantle, not the mantle, to get through the boards. That's Legend of Tana. That's based off the Iram game, which is called the Mantle, or it's called Mantle, right? We don't see the actual words, but by looking at the kind of like, the layout of the outline, it does look like it probably says Mantle. So, what is it, in the light world? What is this represented by? And is it, is the whole game supposed to represent that item? Or only the boss in this, or only this boss is the mantle and everything else is something different? It's very confusing, I'll be honest. Like, I'm not sure how it works. It's held together by glue and sticks, probably. Probably not. Probably there's like a brilliant explanation for it and I'm just not stumbling upon it. I don't have enough copes for Iram. I don't have enough thoughts about Iram to really, pinpoint about it. Because they're just really mysterious. Because they're basically a secret boss in themselves, but they're not supposed to be. We get an item from them. Yes, like we do from secret bosses, as I mentioned before. But we don't get a Shadow Crystal. And Shadow Crystal is only gotten from the night. And we also get a secret weapon from the night, but that one is not, a live entity, let's say. It's a shard of the night sword. So it is curious what is going on here with Iram in that regard. Genuinely, I have no idea. And the thing is, Iram section is so creepy. I don't think it's supposed to represent anything good. Because we do like a snow grave to get through to the Iram, and we do have to do some fucked up shit, or you can't do fucked up shit, like you can attack Susie when she comes in from out of the screen, and you can kill your friends like Rolsey and Susie from on one of the levels of the game. You kill Tena, you kill Noelle. Noelle was used up. Well, it doesn't say Noelle, but she was used up. And you were used up as Chris, It's very creepy and it's not supposed to be a good thing. So, what I'm also thinking about, I'm gonna jump a bit from talking about the secret bosses. I'm gonna jump a bit to a prophecy. It's not anywhere here. But before you get to the egg room in chapters 4, there's an organic. It's one of those like do enemies like that looks like a very long flute, whatever. I'll enter the pic. But they have a prophecy. I don't remember the prophecy exactly, but it was something about children chasing a devil's tail or something of sorts. And one of the things that was very curious to me, that was like much more mysterious, I guess, without the context of this prophecy to me, is Jevel's dialogue when we defeat him. He says, the roaring is bubbling up, the knight's hand is in motion, whatever. Like, it kind of makes it sound like the domino effect is starting. Like, we pushed the first domino and now it's gonna happen, and whatever is gonna happen is gonna happen. And like Jevil is kind of like alluding to that. And also, what can we get from the Jevil's battle? Jevil's tail. Technically, it's not Devil's tail, right? But Jevil, Devil, it's supposed to sound alike, it's supposed to sound alike. So what I'm saying is, maybe this prophecy is alluding, like, the Eggman is like, don't go down the Shadow Crystal Hall, it might be bad for you, like, maybe you children shouldn't be chasing the Devil's tail, the Devil's tail. It's a cope, I admit it, it's a huge cope. It might mean nothing, it might be pure conjecture, but it is very fun to point out. And coming a bit back to the secret bosses, I don't have anything else to say about Iram, genuinely. I think Iram, like, obviously Iram is also showing us how to play the weird road. And one of the funniest things that people always, like, do when these things, like, very obscure things in Toby's games are found out, that people are like, how were we supposed to figure this out? And the thing is, with the sword route, it's very easy to get the sword route, right? I remember when I first played it, I only got my S on the second board, and I went in, I played the game, I got to a point, and it said, like, it seems like you were supposed to do something else. It didn't say that specifically, but, it alluded to that. So, I found that, and I was, like, very intrigued, and I wanted to go back, and I wanted to check it out, and I went back, and I checked it out. I got the sword route, and as soon as I saw the Ice Palace, like, supposed Ice Palace, I was in shock, because we're doing the Snowgrave. We're doing the weird route. We're killing the enemies, then we're getting a mage that gets, like, freezing powers that can get us through enemies we usually couldn't get as easily. So, for sure I was like, oh my god, this is explaining how to get weird route. And the thing is, Toby did this before. He did this in chapter 2. If you go to the Onion Sun lake, you can see Clam Dude, and if you talk to him on second, in chapter 2, without seeing Onion Sun in chapter 1, and he says, like, ha ha ha, there's a guy there, but it doesn't seem like he wants to come out. Well, like, it's something alluding to reloading back, So, for sure, like, the Iram route is showing us how to do the Snowgrave, and, once again, deltarune is supposed to be, like, also a continuous experience. We have these long gaps between chapters, but it's still supposed to be played as this, like, one game, on release. So obviously it makes sense that Toby is, like, kind of predicting what, a chapter back, basically, like, explaining how to do these things. It's very sinister that something so damaging and so, scary is explained by this boss. And also that we first see someone refer to the shelter and actually going in. Oh my god, I was like this. I was like, no way, are we going in? Like, it was insane, genuinely. So, like, for sure there's some, well, not only some, there's huge mysteries surrounding whatever is happening with Iram. But with so much context, we can only speculate. So I'll leave it up to you guys, because you're probably gonna be more creative with it, because I genuinely have nothing. With Gerson Boom, it's pretty easy. He doesn't have much going on for him besides the fact that he was, people, the knight tried to recruit him, but, the knight failed because he was, like, so much into actual freedom, because these guys, they have, like, very probably warped view of what freedom is. Like, Jevil thinks he's free when he's inside of the cell, and Spampton is so obsessed with freedom, he's, like, willing to hurt anyone. It's showing, like, very unsavory traits when it comes to, like, freedom seeking. And Gerson is completely rejecting that, and he's saying, like, no, I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna do it my way, the actual freedom way. It's kind of scary to imagine what would, Gerson crash out look like. because I don't think it's gonna look good. Because we fight like Spamton pre-hiss, crash out with a shadow crystal, and then we fight Spamton Neo, which was probably also caused a crash out caused by a shadow crystal. So for sure, it would have been even worse. It would have been probably even worse. So maybe we should be thanking Toby for not putting it in. And I think, friend, this thing, right? This is the most mysterious thing I have encountered in this entire board, I think, besides maybe like Iram and Gaster, like, because Friend appears for the first time in chapter 2. You can see it in the basement of Queen's Mansion when you go to retrieve Spamton Neo's body. And then it also appears in Spamton Sweepstakes, which kind of like cements its connection to Spamton in some sort of way. At least, like, the imagery is there, right, to connect the two. And we knew it was kind of like a separate entity from Spamton, or at least we kind of guessed it might be, because, it got a different smile. And not only that, but I think the colors were reversed, right? Like it is here on these two. I'm not sure about that one, but I'll add it in post to confirm. And we kind of guessed it might be a separate entity from that, but we weren't like sure what it means at all, because it is like when it appears in chapter 2, it has like a very different what's it called, name, because as I mentioned, like back in the beginning, or maybe I didn't mention, but I should have, is that the Gaster file, like files that are related to like what we assume to be Gaster speaking to us, so like Gunner Maker, for example, or the menus for the incomplete chapter 1. They all have a very similar naming schemes that is separate from the rest of assets in game, and they have like all caps, and they have different like prefixes, I guess. So like a usual sound effect or music from this would be called like muse underscore blah blah blah. But Gaster related files are like audio underscore and it's all caps, right? And same was true about the friend files from chapter 2. Not sure if it's the same in chapter 3. I need to check. Okay, it doesn't seem like there's a concrete answer to my question as of this moment, and I can't really go into the game myself. So let's, because like it also is called like device friend, so we'll assume it is still like all of the instances are connected to the same kind of like entity, let's say, or maybe like a class of entities, because it is funny because Mike, like the fake one, that we fight in chapter 4 if you enter like the mic room inside of your castle town. The mic, the small one, the green Pippin, I think. He says you guys see pink and yellow and assumes that's your friend, but that doesn't mean that they're your friend. And like something like that is said. So it kind of also implies that the entity is malicious, which I wouldn't doubt, because they also appear as attacks in Iram fight, and that fight in itself we went over it. It's its own can of worms. So for sure, friend is something sinister, and what throws me off in this whole equation is that when Ralsei in chapter 3 starts explaining the darkness are not real, for some reason we see this sprite of the friend what is going on? Like, actually, now it makes me think, because also the controller for the Iram game, so the mantle, and the friends, Spamton, they all have the themes of pink and yellow. Because when you pick up the controller to play the mantle game, if you examine it, it's called odd controller, first of all, and second of all, it says that it's pink and yellow in hideous like colors, and I wouldn't say these colors are hideous per se, but that's subjective. And with these two fuckers being attached to those two colors, maybe I can see how that's creepy, especially to Chris, who probably encountered Spamton right before this. But for the for why Ralsei, when Ralsei is talking, we're shown the friend. I don't know how. I don't know how I'm supposed to take it, like, according to the narrative. Is this something, like, is this the visual that Ralsei is invoking? Like, he's, is that what he means? Or is this something that the game shows us, like, to fuck with us, but unrelated to what Ralsei is saying? And I don't think that's the case because, usually it is very related to what Ralsei is saying, like when we're shown the prophecy, when we're shown the roaring in chapter 2. So I think it's supposed to be related to what Ralsei is saying, but why beats me. I mean, it could be because the sound that plays when Ralsei is talking is definitely their laugh, because then a couple of times you encounter them in the board, in the sword root. So for sure we hear that the sound used for their laugh in the cutscene is their laugh, so it's not randomly picked. So maybe it is there to evoke something uneasy, because it does make you feel kind of uneasy. Like, look at this fucking thing, right? And it's not even starting to talk about how it looks. Like the dog amalgamate from True Lab from Undertale, which I have to point it out because that was one of the first things I thought about when I actually saw this thing. The thing is, it's supposed to be a cat, most likely. It looks like a cat, sort of, and it is associated with the cats because in one of the mic fights you can get like a weird cat. It's basically like this fucking thing. And it can deduct points from you, which no other cat I think can do. So this thing is it's definitely like set up to be like some sort of like, not maybe an evil entity per se, antagonistic for sure, but like a very chaotic one as well, it seems like, because as it can award us minus 50,000 points and up to 300,000 points. So it's not just punishment, but there is like some what's it called? Some use to be derived out of this, like, I guess, interaction, relationship, whatever you want to call about it. So I don't think it's an evil entity, but an antagonistic one for sure. And why it's also looking like an amalgamate, I don't know. Is this because it's more of, I don't know, maybe an abstract entity? Because, for example, we see multiples of them when we fight Iram, and they don't have the legs, they only have this head, right? And they slide across the screen, which is, by the way, kind of weird. We are usually only shown this upper half, and this was actually I think one of the only times we saw this sprite was in the cutscene that Ralsei says. And we also see the silhouette, the blacked out silhouette, when we do one of the mazes in chapter 4. But I know what it all means. Because, maybe it looks like an amalgamate because it's like when it's this form, it's like multitudes of friends coming together. Like, I can only cope so much, okay? We have so little information. I'm just throwing it out there. Maybe you guys are much smarter than me and already figured it all out, and I would love to hear it. I would love to hear it. And with that, we sort of like are about as finished as we can be with this, I guess. We're obviously gonna be coming back to it because I'm not finished talking about like chapter 3, so we'll come back to these probably, and we'll talk about it. And well, let's just do it. Let's talk about chapter 3 because chapter 3, the first fuck ass problem of mine with chapter 3 is that it was opened by Chris. It was opened by Chris, and still there are no references besides from Ram that it was opened by Chris, and Tana says something about having a deal with Chris, and Tana also mentions the knight actually once, I think. Okay. I found it. So let's start over. Chapter 3, Dark World. Opened by Chris. Referred by Ram as being opened by Chris, but referred to Tana as being opened by the knight. Not directly, let's say, but it is highly alluded to, in a way that's like, Tana is saying like he wants to be useful to the knight, and he has to keep the 3 of them, so like Ralsei, Susie, Chris, busy, so he can be useful to the knight. So he is alluding to the fact that he works with the knight, even though he probably doesn't, because as I mentioned in chapter 3, it seems like the Roaring Knight just entered the Dark World. I mean, that kind of how it always looks. Like, maybe that's conjecture. Maybe I can't say that the Roaring Knight just entered the Dark World at the end of it. But I think so. I just know it. I just can't prove it just yet. But it feels like, basically my point is, it still makes kind of like little to no sense. Like, why would Chris create this specific Dark World? And for Tana to seemingly lie about, meeting the knight, possibly. The thing with the knight, the only evidence I do have is that why just not steal Toriel? Like, while everyone else is distracted with the words, why did the knight need this time of distracting the fun gang to get maybe tutorial? Maybe tutorial. I'm such a nerd. I'm so sorry. But yes, it might be that, Chris created the dark. But, like, it still makes no sense. It still makes no sense to me. Like, it still feels like, Chris kind of went off on their own, in some regard at least. I don't know. There might be a cope here somewhere, in a way that's like, I don't have a string between Chris and Tana because I forgot. But just imagine there is one. Let's put it on. Let's do this. I have so much tape over Chris, you can barely tell it's them. There's like only a bit of their face like sticking out. This is what they get for being a main protagonist, a mysterious bitch. Okay, the connection is established. It's looking even more crazy now. Okay, but let's cope it into one continuous narrative. So what I'm thinking, and what kind of a few people also thought about, is that it seems like Ram and Chris, Chris used to play with Ram a lot. What are the implications of a small child playing with an electrical socket at a young age? I don't know. Take away what you will. but don't play with sockets, please, kids. But for sure, like, there is some, like, sentimental connection between the two, especially with how familiarly, Ramp is referring to Chris. Like, almost sort of with the same kind of, like, warmth and love that Tana does, but maybe without the crazed up malice that is from Crazy Divorce. By the way, we didn't even get into Spamtana of it all. Oh my god. For sure, there is a connection between Ram and Chris, at least in a way that Ram is so eager to please Chris, like, in any way possible, like, but they don't even know that they're probably harming Chris, because the sword root is definitely freaking them the fuck out. I do wonder if they knew that something like this can happen, because they are in on the plan to some degree. So how much of it they know? Do they know about the shadow crystals that the knight is leaving those? Because, they might not be working, like, in the same way that some people, like, meme about. Like, obviously I don't really think that the communication between the knight and Chris is quite like some people meme about. Like, obviously those are memes, but, like, don't go around thinking that, Carol, Gaster, Rory Knight, and Chris are in constant, like, Discord voice chat. And the Rory Knight is not sitting there being like, yo, can someone hope on Minecraft real quick? I need some help. Like, that's not what happens. Like, in my personal opinion, like, Roaring Knight is kind of like a more mindless entity than we make it out to be. Like, it doesn't even speak. I don't think there is a single other, like, besides friends, but, that just proves my point. But not a single other entity doesn't speak. We hear something. Like, obviously it can be for suspense, and, maybe in chapter 5, the Roaring Knight appears at the festival and does, the most beautiful freestyle rap, and I'm proving so wrong, because, but I don't know, they're still, like, very... But then again, thinking back to the cough, if they were just, like, an animal, I don't think they would be able to, like, understand a subtle hint that Chris is giving to the knight. I don't know, guys. I know this is so hard. Okay, maybe it's not animalistic. Let's forget I said that. But I don't think they have, like, DMs. That's all I'm gonna say. Maybe they, like, still act outside of each other's, like, field of knowledge, let's call it. Like, obviously they are conspiring, but I don't think it's as willing as some people make it out to be. Like, I don't think Chris is mixed up in this whole situation because they want to, because they clearly don't. They don't want to be put through hell by being controlled by an otherworldly entity, even if a nice one. They probably don't want to cooperate with their childhood best friend's abusive mother. And finally, I don't think they are willingly working with the knight. I think there's some sort of, like, fuckery going on between whatever happened with this, whatever Carol did about it, and whatever was Chris's involvement in all of it. Because there should be also, like, another, oh my god, Chris, I am so sorry, but there should be another thread between, like, the eggs and Chris. Or at least the trees, okay? Like, this is supposed to represent the Eggman and the eggs in general, but it is specifically the tree sprite, and that one is important to Chris. Because the thing is, Chris is traumatized by whatever is behind the tree, and a lot of people put out some sort of, like, thoughts on it. Like, some people thought that maybe they saw someone hanging in a tree, presumably dead. maybe there was like something gruesome behind the tree, maybe they did something gruesome behind the tree, maybe they are, you know, visualizing a tree as some sort of like therapeutic advice to obscure a situation, you know, that happened to them and was super traumatic. Like, I personally don't have a favorite yet. I do like the hanging death theory, because that would be actually like fitting very nicely with the narrative I'm trying to build as well. Which I don't know if I touched upon it. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm filming this across several days and I don't have a script. Ugh. But basically, I don't know if I mentioned it. If I mentioned it, I will just edit it out. If I didn't, like, you know, here you go. My personal theory between, like, you know, what connects the Chris, the Carol, December night, whatever, Gaster also is in a mix, is that something horrible happened to December. What exactly, we don't know. Presumably, she is dead, in my personal, professional, theoretical opinion. I'm just not sure if I pulled this narrative together when I wanted to, because I wanted to talk about it, but because I don't script these things, I'm not sure if I mentioned this. But my, you know, timeline of events would be that something happened to December, and Chris was either a witness or, you know, had some sort of a hand in what happened to December, which makes them feel both guilty towards Asriel and towards the entire Holiday family in general. And it could be them going to a shelter, it could be them being the one who found the body, if, you know, the hung December theory is true, is correct. And I think that whatever happened to December kind of like messed up with her, I don't know, body, and after that she turned, probably due to some sort of ritual, into the roaring night. I don't necessarily think it's like some sort of, you know, religious ritual or something. I think of it more even not as a ritual, but like some sort of deal with the devil. It doesn't have to be a ritual. It can be like some sort of experimental, medical bullshit or whatever. But my point is, I think Carol and Gaster are like working together in some capacity. I don't think, like, you know, same as the Roaring Knight and Chris. I don't think they're hanging out together in like a Discord voice chat. So I don't think you know, Gaster and Carol have like a particularly straightforward connection, but I do think they have connection of some sorts, and maybe Gaster is like pushing Carol to do these things. This is all conjectures. This all could be a huge cope. None of this is confirmed, so like keep that all in mind. But I do think it would just like kind of fit, you know. I'm just trying. Think of this word as me trying to tell one story. Don't look at the timeline. Don't try to tell me that I am failing. I know I'm failing, but you know, I'm trying to do it anyway. So what I think happened, like whatever happened to December, maybe her body got like, you know, amalgamated with some sort of determination, or the equivalent of determination in deltarune. I mean, obviously you still have determination in deltarune, like that's the whole basis of the Dark World, if you remember that. But that's beside the point. Like whatever happened to December, it could have happened to her like directly while she was still alive, or it could have happened to, like, you know, deceased December. But my bad is on deceased December. So what happens is her body gets turned into the night. She either exists as the night inside of the bunker all this time, or it's a gradual process and only now the night is taking over and like kind of forming into its own entity and trying to escape the shelter. Because I just think that, like, you know, I do think that the night is responsible for the Dark World, but there's also like a very small chance that actually Carol and Chris might be working against the night and trying to get them back into the shelter or whatever. Because it is stated that Carol is like a scary person who's constantly like doing some vigilante shit or of sorts. So it could happen. I'm not betting on it. Once again, I don't particularly feel like that's a good explanation, but Um, and yeah, so the connection is the Gaster is kind of like moving them as puppets to get what he wants. He wants to get like maybe the prophecy, maybe he's putting it in motions, or maybe he's putting it in differing motions that will, kind of bend the rules of the universe and allows them to get away with a different ending. Like, it doesn't really matter what the Gaster's motivation is, if he's like, a benevolent entity or a malevolent one. What matters is that he is 100% the one pulling the strings on the rest of the characters who are probably connected to the Knight. So, because also he's connected to the shelter, obviously. So, my guess is he's sitting there in the shelter in some form. I don't think physical specifically. And that's also where the Knight is. But it was probably created by Carol's request of her probably deceased daughter's body, and Chris knows all about it in some form, maybe because there was a witness, and it's quite possible that it is connected to whatever they saw behind the tree, or whatever they saw was that man that they keep forgetting, right? It is quite interesting that if it is not connected, like the tree is not connected and it's like a separate trauma, I am curious if they, if they did see it, because like my only connection is that I think maybe they saw something behind the tree, or the tree is like obfuscating what they saw, but the tree is also connected to a man that they keep forgetting. And it seems like they can't remember a face. That's why in chapter 4 they keep like scribbling over, or they don't want to remember the face, right? So maybe it's not actually connected to this. Who the man is, who knows? It could be Papyrus. It could always be Papyrus. I don't particularly believe in that personally, but I'm not knocking it because I've said much crazier things in here, I think. But yes, that's my story for what I think the Knight is, what the story with the Knight is, and connections to Carol, Chris, and Gaster, whatever. Obviously, none of this is concrete. All of these are more abstract ideas and a very loose narrative, but I'll take what I can get. And I think it's time we get back to the weirdness of chapter 3, Dark World. Because once again, I do believe that, the Knight is entering chapter 3, Dark World, in the beginning, because otherwise there would be no need to, stall the characters. They could just steal Toriel and get away with it, because they don't hesitate to do the same with Undyne, so I doubt they would hesitate to do the same with Toriel. So that's my evidence for why I think, the Knight could not have been in the Dark World in any point in the timeline but the end of chapter 3, probably as we're fighting Tana, or as we defeat Tana and they enter and they see our confrontation. But yeah, that's my guess. That's my guess. But yeah, that's my guess. And another thing that I want to think about, right, is why Toriel specifically. What is special about the Toriel? Or who is she special to? This kid. And who is working with the Knight? This kid. And once again, I don't know if I mentioned this before or not. Once again, sorry, I'm all over the place. I'm going to vacation out of city with my girlfriend, but half of my footage got deleted, so now I'm frantically trying to record as much as I can, so I can get as much out as I possibly could on this topic, so when I come back, I have another topic, and I don't have to, try to remember everything and not repeat myself, which I'm failing at. Besides the point. My point with the Knight and Chris is that Chris is a reluctant follower, FNAF joke. My thing is that they're reluctant to follow in like Knight's stand because it's quite clear that they are not fighting back in full. They're not quite pleased with the situation, I would assume, especially with how they are able to do more damage. So they're holding back, but as they see their friends hurt, they don't hold back anymore. It could mean multitudes of things. It could mean also nothing. I don't think it means nothing, but it could. But I do think that, they are not exactly buddy-buddy and they're not best friends in any capacity. So my guess is the knight knew that somehow Chris disobeyed the plan, their order. They probably opened the dark world way too early. And they're like, okay, that fucks with my plan. And now I'm gonna steal your fucking mom to make you regret what you did. Maybe it was like kind of like, I'm gonna punish you so you can see what I can do. Like, don't think you can fuck with me. Like, maybe that was a threat, that could possibly happen. It is quite obvious that the knight is very reckless and not really interested in consequences, especially with how they open the Dark Fountain inside of chapter 4 Dark Fountain, which creates the roaring and it doesn't create the roaring, but it creates a titan, which is how the roaring begins. So they can be very malicious probably in their intent with stealing Toriel. But why Chris opens it so early? Once again, it could be because of Ram. It could be like of some sort of pity. Maybe they knew what was gonna happen and they didn't want to see that happen because this is their house. Why it's open in their house? That's also a huge question. Maybe this was actually not supposed to be part of Knight's plan, but I am not sure of that. It does seem like, in my personal opinion, that Tenna has a deal with Chris, of some sorts, that they're gonna explore this. They're gonna do it. Maybe it is part of the Knight's plan, but there's also a sliver of possibility that Chris just wanted to have fun with Susie inside of their house and like with their own items. But then again, with how they kind of react to how Tenna behaves, it could be just part of Knight's plan. For why they open it so early, who knows? It could have been premeditated, but maybe them opening the world early was spur of a moment for them to like have time maybe to hang out with Rosie and Susie. But who knows? Genuinely, I have no idea as of this moment. I do think that Chris can deal more damage to Tenna because Tenna is kind of like exposing our secrets or whatever. But who knows? Chapter 3, Dark World, is so weird because of that. Because, once again, Tenna talks about the night, and it seemingly is a ruse he and Chris orchestrate together for Susie, seemingly. Because I don't think Rosie doesn't know. I think only Susie doesn't know. So that's also, like, fucked up. Maybe that's also, like, one of the reasons why, Chris may... well, we don't know if Chris feels uneasy when Susie says, like, oh, I hate people who don't tell me their whole deal. But I could feel their sweat, okay? Maybe that's why. Besides the general weirdness of the Chapter 3 world, it's not that crazy. I think the craziest part of this new release was definitely, like, the Titans. No questions about it. Like, the reveal, the animation, the absolute insanity of it all. Oh my god. The fact that none of us have expected to see Titans this early. Like, genuinely, it's crazy. And I think in general it's kind of important to, right now, investigate what the scene with the Titans and the general cutscenes and the gameplay tell us. And boy, do they tell us a lot. Like, obviously not a lot of concrete things, Obviously, there's still a lot of things that we don't really know if they're true or if we are interpreting them correctly. But there's a lot of symbolism, a lot of really, really cool stuff that we can deconstruct a bit. You know, like we can try it at least at this point in time because, like, now we know more. Well, first of all, I think it's quite obvious that every dark fountain has the ability to turn into a titan. Quite literally, like it's quite literally in the text. I'm sorry, but this is like quite literally canon. The fountain that the knight opens in the chapter 4 Dark World comes up and then becomes petrified, like the Lancer and Rules card do, like in other Dark Worlds, or as a bunch of Darkners did in chapter 3 and chapter 4, respectively. What we see is Titans emerging from the petrified fountain, and, you know, we see the many eyes, we see the darkness that keeps, like, assaulting the main heroes. It's quite spooky, to say the least. I think it's a really... I know a lot of people were like, oh my god, the Titan fight is so hard. Personally, I didn't feel that, but I think that's because I did all of the secret bosses. Sadly, I am the sweaty bullet hell gamer. Obviously, I cannot no-hit knight, but I almost did. That's a lie. But I did, fight on the first fight with the Titan, like right after the release. I did not die a single time. I did die on the fountain once because it was I didn't know you should be avoiding the white things. But that's beside the point, you know. The important part is, first of all, if you're struggling with the Titan battles, there is a pity mechanic, and you can look into it, and it can help you. But second of all, I can give you some strats, but that's beside the point. No, we should stay on focus. So what do we know about the Titans? A lot of eyes, a lot of kind of like neonatal, I don't know, imagery. It's quite interesting. I mean, everyone has joked about it at this point. I don't know what is it called, the spawns? Like that the Titan summons, like the black little things. They do look like fetuses. But what I also felt they kind of look like is memory head. I know this is a crazy connection to make, but if you like look, and I'm gonna be inputting both of the pictures probably right now on the screen. But I am not saying that they don't look also like fetuses, but it also made me realize them, maybe that's what the memory had also kind of looked like, because at first we thought it was like kind of a brain, whatever. It kind of looks like one, but it also looks like the dark thing, the black thing. I'm not sure, maybe it is because the Titans, the fetus imagery is a neonatal one. I think it might be emerging because the Titans themselves are kind of like burst from fountains. And also, it's quite obvious we're fighting probably not full power Titan. I'm not sure on that specifically. It might not be true, but I think the fact that we fight it right after it emerges might indicate that we fought like a lesser version of a fight that probably could have been fought. So maybe that's also emerging with it, because also as you progress through the battles, there's other things that appear on the same kind of like screen. There are the weird silverfish things. They don't really look like silverfish. I don't remember what these things are called that they look like. The ones with a lot of feet. And also the red things that look like eyes. And those eyes are like, they've been connected to Titans for a long time, so I don't need to do a lot of connecting there. Because it also throws us back to the beginning of the chapter 1 Dark World, where we saw a lot of eyes and only eyes blind in the darkness can see. quite literally, I think that specific prophecies relating, now that we know how dark worlds are working, especially with the, with the Ralsei cutscene, where he shows us that, when it gets darker and dark, that's when dark worlds appear. Like, not quite literally, but that's how they metaphorically work. And I think that prophecy is kind of like calling back to that, so I personally don't look much more into it, but maybe there is something, like, I'm not denying it. But it is quite interesting that the eyes are the represent the titans, because once again, you have to get even darker and darker and dark, like, it is double negative, so we're going into to summon a titan. So why eyes, right? Especially open eyes, because that's what we see. We only see like open eyes related to titans so far, if we disregard the beginning of chapter 1 Dark World. If those ones are related to titans, those ones are actually blinded, so they do more work into my kind of interpretation of double negative darkness. That's what I'm coining it as, double negative darkness. That's what's calling forth the titans. That might feed into it, but once again, all of the directly related to the titans imagery, like the eyes that emerge from the fountains and the eyes in the bottles, the red ones that follow us, those are open eyes. So I don't know. I don't know where they're open. Maybe it's about awakening of the titan more than, going darker and dark. So maybe that one is related to a different aspect of titans, rather than like them being created from the double negative darkness. Double negative darkness sounds so fucking dorky. Disregard me. But I will continue using it, because I will not be saying darker and darker and dark ever again. That's even worse. And quite obviously also save points, right? Why do they all have save points on their faces? After we put down the save point, after we defeat the save point, let's say, it is revealed that the face of the fountain of the titan is like blank, like kind of a hole that goes into the titan, as we later find out from Susie and Chris jumping inside of the inside of titan and the fountain, I guess, because once again Chris defeats the titan not really by doing anything besides making us like kind of seal the fountain that created the titan. So once again, it only like confirms that, titans are fountains. Quite possible that that's why also Ralsei is so adamant about not having a lot of fountains open at once. Well, he's not adamant, but, it's referred to in text. Maybe, if there's too much darkness covering a certain perimeter, let's call it that, it disrupts the pollen so much that it tips once again into the double negative darkness, and it kind of summons first the titans. Conjecture, maybe a cope, but quite possible nonetheless. But yes, why save points? And the save points in themselves are kind of weird. Like, we can disregard maybe the chapter 4 Light World save points, because it was kind of confirmed by Toby's Twitter that was more out of necessities and him wanting it to be a narrative device, as compared to save points inside of the Dark World, because if you don't know, before the release of chapter 3 and 4, I think in February, he was tweeting a lot about the finishing steps of testing of the chapter 3 and 4. And one of the feedbacks he got is that it's kind of inconvenient that you can't save in the Light World in chapter 4, especially since it's such a long segment. And I fully agree. Like, sometimes you gotta balance these narratives and narrative things with, realistically what you can expect from a gamer. And I mean like an average gamer, because I would fuck up that shit. Like, I'm sorry, I don't even think I saved once in the chapters for Dark Light World when I played it for the first time. But that's besides the point. We can disregard those, and we can more focus on the ones in the Dark Worlds, because those seem more, I don't know, not only gameplay and elements, those seem like more important to the story as well. And I was actually thinking about it recently. The save points in kind of like deltarune are weird in a way that's like they don't seemingly work the same way. I broke my pointer. Save points in Undertale, it's quite obvious that they are existing, like the resets that you do through save points, they also exist for the characters in some regard. Maybe not to to everyone, but like for example, Sans, Tammy, Asgore, they can tell how much times more or less you have reset, or at least they have awareness of it. And the characters, if you reset like an ending, for example, they can get, I think so, I don't know if you can like reset the whole game, that have characters have deja vu. I don't remember, assuming. But for sure there are references, like if you play at least twice, that characters sort of remember you, like they remember what you would prefer. For example, in case of Toriel in Undertale, she remembers what we picked last time, and asks if she is correct, and then says that she sometimes gets these deja vu feelings. And it's not clear if she means by deja vu feelings that the other kids had the same kind of like save point, or if it was Flowey, because Flowey has, like pure determination. So it's kind of like unclear where like if those humans also possess that power to reset and save. But for sure Frisk and Flowey did. And seemingly in Deltarune it doesn't work that way. At least no one references ever like any deja vus. Even if you do like a fucked up route, there are no indications that you ever even did that. And obviously it also ties in with the weirdness of us having like kind of 3 slots to save into. I think there is something to be said about it. I don't think save points in Undertale and Deltarune work the same in like any way. It's quite obvious that the ones in Undertale are working off of determination of some sorts, because they are always mentioning determination. But the Deltarune ones mention that Chris is the only one who can see it, and it fills you with power of something. So they are based on power, like the Deltarune ones, and the Undertale ones are based on determination. What is the difference, and how do we define this power? That eludes me. Because we can obviously point fingers to the weird root, and we can say like, we say to Noelle that, we're growing stronger, we're getting more powerful, blah, blah, blah. But that's the thing. Do we corrupt the meaning of power in the weird root, or is the meaning of power is the sinister, we just kind of like, push through it despite? I'm more of a camp, it gets corrupted on the weird route, because obviously the power can come from like friends, family, loved ones, and power can come from aggression, violence, and raw physical power, for example. Not specifically in Noelle's case because she's a snow mage, but it might also, like, now that I talked to myself about the power and stuff like that, maybe that is to indicate the power of Titans, that they're so powerful, they're kind of creating their own light, but the light is so powerful it can be seen by others, not just by Chris, because obviously, like, the others see the shield, as they call it. Not sure. That might be... Not sure. That might be a huge cope. We'll see. Titans are also quite obviously representative of some sort of like things you can like horrors beyond your comprehension that you can find in the darkness, because like once again, double negative darkness, creates titans. What is even darker than, like, if it's darker than dark, it kind of creates like maybe quite literally. Doesn't Rosie say they are the fear of the dark? You know, when you get even darker, when you can see even, like, you know, all of these wacky characters, right? All that is left is kind of like terror of the unknown, of the darkness, blah blah blah. So, you know, there's your symbolic tie, there's your metaphor. In general, like, you know, the most interesting fountain to me personally is the one that is in the castle town. How does it work? We know that it's made of pure darkness, but what makes it different to be made of pure darkness? And who created it? Because maybe it's different because it was not created by the knight, but then who did? Gaster? It is possible! Like, I know we deltarune people and deltarune theorists are being made fun of, like, all the time for pointing fingers at Gaster, but it's because he has his slimy hands all over this. Because think back to entry 17. He is describing the process of creating a dark world, or, like, observing a dark world. So he at least knows about them, and he can possibly maybe create one? So, like, that's not as far-fetched as it might appear. Like, yes, we are crazy. And it might be, like, completely off. But you cannot blame us for making the connection, because Tobias Fox did it first. Tricky Tony tricked us yet again. And so, if I'm the crazy one, it's all thanks to Tricky Tony. Besides that, I don't really have anything interesting to say about the fountains. Besides the fact that, you know, in chapter 2, it's mentioned that you need determination, but we kind of latched onto those words really hard because it was like one of the only times in Deltarune that determination was even like mentioned. So obviously, like, we as former Undertale fans, we latched onto it, but it seems like it's not really, you know, those are just words. At least in my personal opinion. Because Susie doesn't say, like, do I need to collect all of my determination into the knife to, you know, create the dark world. She doesn't say that. She says, like, my intentions, blah, blah, blah. So, like, that's kind of like determination, but I think the fact that it is not repeated as determination kind of proves that it's not tangible concept like it is in Undertale, where we can, like, extract, like, you know, determination out of the soul, and determination is, like, yes, it's kind of metaphysical, but it still has, like, some tangible rules, like you can reset, blah blah blah, you can reset, you can save, you can reload, so, you know, there are some tangible concepts around the determination in Undertale. Not quite the same thing happens with what we hear about the fountains, because yes, the Queen says you have to gather your determination into the weapon and stab it into the ground. Once again, I'm referring you to Susie, who does not repeat those words. Yes, it might be because Susie is not the kind of person to mention that, but I also think it means, then again, she is most likely the most determined one. I don't know. My personal opinion is that, you know, determination is not a tangible concept like it is in Undertale. Not the same way, at least. It's more like an abstract concept of, like, your intentions, your inner power. And it does not have the same rules as it does in Undertale. That's all I'm gonna say on the topic. I want you all to know that the next point in my list of topics that I want to talk about is called What We Know Shelter Style. What that says about me, I don't know. We'll see. I played too much with the previous pen and broke it, so this time for real. So we're getting this probably empty beak pen instead. So, shelter style. What do we know? Quite literally nothing. Quite literally so far, not a lot. I think it's quite, like, there's a connection here, obviously, from Mayor, Officer Undyne, and Shelter, because those are quite obvious in a way that, like, one of the codes is quite clearly with Carol. One of the, well, not Carol, but inside of the manor with her, like, supposed supervision. Another one was held by Undyne, who got scooped into the thing, and that is collaborated by Alfie, saying that she sees the mayor and Officer Undyne go in sometimes. Well, she doesn't say Officer Undyne, she says police, I think, but that's beside the point. And Blue says that Undyne was fidgeting with some sort of combination of code and was always, like, nervous about it. So quite literally, like, one of the codes inside of the Holiday Manor belongs to Carol. One of them is probably inside of the police station, belongs to Undyne, and one of them belongs to the church, seemingly. I'm not sure. It might also, and stick with me for this because this is gonna be a huge code, might indicate the Dreamer family. One of them, maybe one of them was Asgore. That's an insane cope. Disregard it. It's like 95%. I'm sure it's not with Asgore. But it is interesting that, you know, but it might be possible that it at some point it was also with the Dreamer family. Well, quite obviously Asgore, he probably knew the codes beforehand because he was the chief of police, which is what the position of Undyne is right now. But I don't know. You know, I'm thinking about the little deltarune, like above the Toriel's house, like the Dreamer residency. Like, yes, it's more likely that it's a church, but if I don't point out the less obvious maybe connection, I would not be myself. That's all I'm gonna say. So, 2 confirmed codes. One is with Carol, one was Undyne. One is not confirmed quite yet. We don't know where it is. Like, yes, we go inside of the church, and yes, we, like, rustle through things at Alvin's office, but also, quite literally, most of the things we interact with say, no time for this, or it's gonna take too much time to look through these. So I can't say we explored it enough to say that it's not with Alvin, but also once again, the little deltarune's insignia above the Dreamer residency, it's also tipping me off a bit in their direction. So maybe it was Chris. Who knows? Like, you know, Tommy, all that these releases have taught me is that maybe some connections are not, you know, are not that crazy. Maybe some of the connections are still quite possible, despite how unlikely they seem. Poor Tammy, I keep bumping into you with my back. But yeah, those are the combination codes. Seemingly, like, Shelter has 3 codes. One is probably gonna be 12/25, December holiday, which is, you know, it is associated with December, and we'll come back a bit to it when we talk about the hand, because I'm sure most of you are curious what the fuck is going on with the hand. Don't worry, I'll acknowledge it at some point. We're just not there yet. So for sure, one of the codes is gonna be Undyne. Gonna be December. One of the codes we might find maybe with Blue Key. I don't know. We'll see. And one of the codes can be either in the church or, as I cope in, with the Dreamer residency. Other than that, what can we say about the Shelter? Quite obviously, the Shelter has another dark world inside of it. Quite obvious it's related in some way to Gaster because of the Muse_smile which plays when we stand outside of the bunker or get too close to it, which is heavily associated with Gaster. Yes, it was debated in the fandom, but I still associate it with Gaster. I think that's, you know, that's not that crazy. Other than that, Also, there's quite a big possibility that that shelter led to death or disappearance, and it's quite obvious also that Chris saw inside of the bunker, and also they really don't want to go in there, which makes me think that that's what happens. Maybe this is the place of death of December holiday, or maybe this is the place where she disappeared to and never appeared to again. Anything is possible. Other than that, I'm sorry, I don't really have any copes about the shelter. Once again, my main cope about the shelter is that's where December died, quite possibly with Chris being the witness, and this is also the place where she's getting revived, quite possibly. There's also the curious observation that some people made. I personally thought about it a bit, but I didn't give it too much thought. But Sean tells us that we shouldn't be caught out. But Sean says that we should not be seen outside during the night, and we should hurry back home if we don't want to get caught. Caught by what? Maybe it's the night. I almost put it to December because she's the night, in my opinion. But quite possibly it's the night. Quite possibly they can exist to some degree in the light world. You know, at least during the night. So maybe we could not see them during the day, but during the night they're out and about. This also This also makes me think a lot about the night in the woods. I don't know if a lot of people got that feeling, but like almost as soon as we got out of the dark world in chapter 3 to chase the night, it gave me huge night in the wood vibes. And it's also taking time during the fall, and you know, like mysterious disappearances in a small town, and quite possibly related to older disappearances in the same small town. No one is really content with the life there, as it seems. Everyone is content living there, but no one is content with life per se, or it keeps getting worse in some regards. So it definitely gave me a huge night in the woods vibes. Other than that, I don't really have any copes about the shelter. I think the night is in there. I think Guster is in there in some form. I don't think like literally this guy is sitting there. Maybe he exists in some form, because I think he's currently existing kind of like as code, not necessarily like maybe he's like an entity that lives inside of the code to some degree. That's my cope for Guster. Maybe we'll go into the room and we'll be able to communicate with him on like a giant screen, like kind of like in Fallout New Vegas, that one extension, that one DLC. But other than that, I don't really have any copes about the shelter. I'm so sorry. I know this is very disappointing. Probably. If you want to, I can throw in maybe the friend is there. Maybe the friend is there, because also a lot of people are interpreting the friend for a good reason. Once again, I mentioned this before, but they do seem like a chaotic, and because of their chaos, kind of malicious entity. So quite possibly the devil's tale that the children followed led the children inside of kind of like the forest, because it is kind of located off in the forest if you think about it. Like there's a really long like path to it, and it's thick with trees on each side from every direction. So quite literally, maybe the friend lured December and Chris, or like talked December into taking her and maybe someone else, and she decided taking Chris is a good idea into the shelter, and whatever happened with her happened. Maybe it was not specifically a trap set up by like the friend or whatever. Maybe it is, but maybe it's something unrelated, and it was kind of like, maybe it was just an accident actually. Maybe she was not killed by anything. Maybe she just went into the bunker and, you know, slipped on something and fucking bashed her head in. I don't know. Anything can happen inside of these freaky doors. Speaking of unexplained and very mysterious things, we talked a bit about Eggman, but I need to talk a bit more. Who is he? Eggman is fucking weird, man. So the thing with Eggman, we know his schedule, okay? In chapter 3, we talk to him directly, the most directly we ever spoke to him, because he addresses us, you know. I'm trying to also see if he mentions, because I also want to connect him, quite possibly, to the deltarune character. I mean, quite obviously, he kind of refers to it in the chapter 3 when we talk to him. He says the wash your coat and grab your face or something, which is the same thing that was in the Valentine newsletters in 2024. So obviously that letter was written by him, and he mentions deltarune. I just can't remember, because I remember that in the letter he mentions it as delta space rune. Does he mention it as delta space rune in chapter 3? I don't remember. Sue me. I think so, because I remember that in chapter 4, after credits, Guster addresses us, and he says deltarune without a space. So I think there's a differentiation that Guster, when he says deltarune without a space, he refers quite possibly to the game directly, and Eggman is referring to something else, quite possibly the prophecy. But I'm not sure. He might be also referring to the game, but in a different way. But the fact that it is spaced out, like it was in Undertale, for example, it was called Delta Space Rune. So maybe it is referring more to the prophecy. Maybe it's hard to tell. It's hard to tell, I'll be honest. In chapter 3, we also learn of his schedule. It is alluding to the locations where you can find him, and it's also corresponding to the days of the week that the things that happen. Except chapter 3, he never mentions what he does in chapter 3, but it's quite, you know, obvious to assume that he's hanging out in the no man land. It's quite funny because he is a man. But before we get into how to get to him in chapter 3, which is like its own you know, ARG in some regard, I would say. It's quite a puzzle. But for sure, other times he is referring to what he's gonna be doing on this particular day, because he says on Thursday I bake donuts, and the location to meet the Eggman is right beside the donut stand in the Scarlet Forest. Then on Fridays he dumps them into the dumpster, and where do we find the second egg in the second chapter? Right next to the dumpster. And on Saturday he lets it cool on the windowsill. And how do we find the egg room in chapter 4, which takes place on Saturday, mind you? Because it's quite possible that chapter 3, Dark World, is taking place both on Friday and on Saturday. So we can disregard that one, especially since we know where the Eggman is during that time. He is inside of the no man land. So let's focus on Saturday. On Saturday, he lets it cool by the windowsill, and on Sunday, he's harvesting the wheat. So we have to keep our eyes peeled for any wheat-related imagery in chapter 5. And after that, hold your breath and count to 100. And then some directions, I think. I'm not sure. I remember the hold your breath and count to 100 thing. Other than that, he doesn't give us any other tips. If we take the hold your breath and count to 100 is maybe a tip for Monday, right? The chapter 6, possibly. Then we'll get a total of 5x, right? So, no, 6x, right? So maybe there won't be a final 7th egg, or quite possibly there's only 5 also, because I'm not sure that the hold your breath and count to 100. Why do I want to say 1,000? And count to 100 it's related to any particular egg that you can get. I think it's just like a finisher to his story of some sorts. Maybe it's going to be related to what we're going to do with eggs afterwards, hold your breath and count to 100, but I'm not sure. You know, like it can be a huge scope. What's interesting is that Timmy is connected to the Eggman. Like, obviously, she's connected to eggs in general. She's been connected to eggs in Undertale, and now in Deltarune, she's also connected to eggs with her boiled egg partner, and her putting up eggs all the time next to her. And the funny thing is, though, the eggs are actually on Birdley's desk. And supposedly every week until Monday we're gonna be visiting and leaving another egg. There's gonna be 5 eggs on his desk, and what is gonna happen on Monday then? Just curious why we're piling it up on his desk, not even Tammy's desk, right? Because before that you could have checked Tammy's egg to see how many eggs you gathered so far until chapter 4, where you have to now check Birdley's desk to see how many eggs you have. But there was one initial egg, because we don't put the chapter 4 egg into the pile yet, so there's one egg already on the desk, quite possibly from Tammy, and then we keep adding to the eggs. But what's interesting, we left the first 2 eggs somewhere. We left the first egg with Asgore, and we left the second egg with Sans. So, how do they appear on Birdley's desk? What is going on with the eggs? And that's not even speaking of the fact that the Forgotten Man, as he is called sometimes, I'm gonna continue calling him the Eggman. The Eggman appears both in the light world and the dark world. I already did my cope with the Eggman being actually Papyrus. It could always be Papyrus. And it's possible because seemingly Papyrus, if he is the brother of Sans, he is also a Lightner, so he could possibly exist both in the dark world and in the light world. And once again, he is also called Forgettable on Genocide Route. I don't know. Maybe he is the Eggman. I'm talking myself into it. Other than that, I don't know what to say about the Eggman. He appears in chapter 1, 2, and 4 light world, so every chapter was a light world segment. In the first chapter, no, he doesn't appear in the first chapter. He appears in the second chapter if you collect the first chapter egg. I'm sorry. But in chapter 2, outside of library, you can check one of the cars and there's going to be a happy man, happy to see you. Quite possibly because we keep remembering him. Because if you ever say to him in chapter 3 that you are gonna forget him, he ceased to exist. He doesn't talk to us anymore. And he's happy to see us. Maybe he's happy because we're remembering him, you know? Maybe he's not even there. Maybe it's a metaphor. Maybe we're seeing, because we personally don't see this person, in the light world. Only Chris seemingly sees them, and obviously the narrator, whoever they are, or whatever it is. So it's quite and the same thing happens in the dark world, right? Seemingly Chris does see the man, but we don't. And it repeats in the light world, because in second chapter we can see the man inside of the car, but it's one of those cars that don't have a the way the side that we interact with is not visible to us, so we can't see if there's someone in the car at all, because after we interact with it, it says there's no man here. So maybe it is kind of glimpses of him, because Chris is starting to remember him, and these glimpses are so happy because the man is happy to be remembered. So I don't really think that the man appearing in the light world is that much of an important thing. But if you take into account the fact that Sans can teleport, and it's quite possible that Papyrus can also, it might be Papyrus. I'm not 100% sure, sold on it, but I'm talking myself into it. Why Tammy is here? Because why the fuck is she connected to X? Other than that, why is she singing the prophecy? I think I mentioned it before, but the fact that, not prophecy, she sings don't forget. She doesn't sing the prophecy song that Noel, Toriel, and the rest of the choir do. She sings literally word by word, don't forget. And also the prophecy song is a bit different in tune. Not tune specifically, but it has a different melody. It has a similar melody, but it's different. And Tammy sings it in tune with the melody of Don't Forget, not the prophecy. So I don't know what's going on with Tammy. Is the man actually Tobias Fox? Maybe. Because he does say that he's been here from the beginning and he's seen the world go through multiple, world-changing events, and at some point the world looked like the No Man's Land, which is very reminiscent of Game Boy. So maybe it's Tobias Fox. Obviously not literally, but like a representation of like a developer of some sort. Maybe this is gonna be like, a counter to how Guster is presented also as a game developer. So anything can happen. With the eggs, oh boy, for sure. Okay guys, 3 more points to talk through. We're gonna do it. So the next point, Papyrus and Sands. What is going on with these two? We're gonna switch sides. I hope this is also photogenetic. Anyway, Papyrus and Sands, what is going on with them? First of all, we don't know if this is Papyrus. This is why I'm putting like a question mark over his face, because we don't know if this is Papyrus we know, we love, we cherish and adore. It might be someone else. There's so many theories about who it can be. It could literally be Gaster. Could literally be Gaster, like genuinely, because Sans never mentions Papyrus by name. We only get references to him going away. Toby Fox mentioned on Steam that where's Papyrus? He's busy. So maybe he's not even here. Maybe he's busy back, I don't know, in Undertale? Obviously not. But maybe he's still like traveling through dimensions through that MacGuffin machine that is quite possibly unbroken in the deltarune timeline yet. So, because as they get into Undertale, they're locked there. The machine is broken and they can repair it. At least Sans can. So, and I am the believer of the fact that, Papyrus is in on it. He knows all of this. He just doesn't talk about it. I think Papyrus's problem is that he's toxically positive to a fault. Like, obviously this is played for, emotions with the genocide route, but, like, with the knowledge that Sans quite literally comes from Deltarune, at least to some degree, or from Deltarune world, it's quite possible that Papyrus does too. Like, he is his brother, at least in Undertale, right? Like, I don't really think, like, I don't know. I just do think that this is Papyrus, in Undertale, or in Deltarune, sorry. Because, I don't know, it just feels right. Like, I know that we don't know for sure if it's Papyrus, but I personally lean towards it 100% being Papyrus. So, Papyrus's problem in Undertale and, with his talks is that he's constantly, like, so toxically positive. You could be, like, the biggest monster that makes other people flee and evacuate to other regions deeper inside of the cave just to be saved from you, and he still goes face to face with you, and he still tells you he believes in you. And to many people, by the way, that's a turning point in genocide. They cannot kill Papyrus because he's just like that hopeful, optimistic, blah blah blah. So it works for him. But at the same time, I think that's the reason he never talks about anything depressing like Sans does. Also, quite literally, quite possibly, he's so toxically positive because of, like, to counteract whatever Sans is going through. Because that happens also. But, speaking of these two motherfuckers, once again, I 100% believe that they are both come from Deltarune, and they get stuck inside of Undertale. And with Papyrus, we don't have anything really so far. Sans asks us to hang out. We try to come back and like hang out, but he says like, oh, maybe he's gonna be back by the time your brother is back. So quite literally, quite possibly like the end of the game. Because I mean, I think with Sunday, there's gonna be like a double whammy, like it was with chapters 3 and 4, at least to some degree, because I think like the festival and the Flower King is gonna happen quite possibly on the same day. So it's quite possible that the chapter 5 is gonna be Flower King before the festival. And I think it's kind of alluded to because Asgard does mention that his business is gonna pick up with the festival, but maybe he fails and he ends up opening a dark world, or he doesn't even care about the festival in general, and that was like an excuse he gave to Carol, and now he's gonna use like the festival time to like investigate whatever in the dark world. I don't know what's gonna happen with him, but I do think that on Sunday he's gonna open the dark world inside of his flower shop right before the festival, and then in chapter 6 and quite possibly 7 we see the festival and all of the fallout of the festival unfold. What I mean by fallout of the festival, I do think the festival is gonna be a shit show. Like, obviously there's gonna be like probably a very cute light world segment where we get to enjoy a bit of the festival, but then it all goes to shit 100%. Like, it is gonna be the climax of the game in my personal opinion. But yes, once again, Sam says that his brother is busy. Well, he doesn't say busy, but he implies it, and says that maybe you'll be able to hang out by the end of the game, basically. And it's quite weird that we don't even see him inside of the house. We see that the house seemingly is absolutely the same as it is in Undertale. So it's quite possible he's up in his room and we just don't see him. Because in chapter 1 we hear a faint rustle of bones when we examine the Skeleton Brothers' house in the light world. Then in chapter 2 the bone rustle gets farther away, and then in chapter 4 there's not a rustle of bones, but we can look inside and see that it's empty. It's just like a normal apartment, their house from Undertale, so it confirms it's the same. What else can be said about Papyrus? Nothing at this point. For all I fucking know, he could still be the knight. I don't personally believe it, but there are still like, Papyrus knight trucers out there, so like if I don't mention it, I think, I will be doing them a disservice. I don't get a single point of yours, people who believe in Papyrus knight, but that's okay. You do you. That's the beautiful thing about lore discussions. What else do we know about these two? The other guy, Sans. I have thoughts, and now we're getting into the extremely messy, like not messy for them specifically, for the two of them, like Sans and Toriel, but messy for the whole. But quite possibly messy for the whole hometown relationship of the convenience clerk and the primary school teacher. So it's quite once again the Skeleton Brothers, specifically Sans, tells us that they moved here recently and they don't have a lot of friends. But Sans mentions that he already befriended your mom last night, which quite literally, sadly, did happen. I am so sorry, Chris. I would kill this motherfucker for you if I could. Like, believe me. I think I even mentioned this, but I am training for this. I'm training for an opportunity to kick his ass. But why am I so hostile? Because I know there's gonna be many people who are gonna say like, oh my god, you're being so harsh, and they actually are really cute together and blah blah blah. It's not important that they're cute together. What's important is the context in which we see these two. Because believe me, it's fucking insane. Chapter 4, Dark World. It's like 2 a.m, your kid has been out of like the house for the whole fucking night, right after your fucking tires got slashed, and you're getting drunk with a clerk. I am sorry, but like as someone with like, some sensibilities towards this kid, I do feel extremely bad for the situation they're in, because yes, Toriel doesn't know that they're going through horrors beyond everyone's imagination, and yes, that is like, she is allowed to live her life. I'm not knocking her, on that. I'm knocking her on the fact that she is constantly like, ignoring the fact that Chris has obvious issues of some sort, and she's constantly like brushing it off, like it's gonna solve itself if she's gonna ignore it, which she does with Asgore as well. She never tells him like, back the fuck off, dude, we are divorced, get out of my face. She never says that. Once again, she's constantly cordial with him to a fault. And I think she's kind of taking the same approach with Chris. If she ignores it, they're gonna figure it out on their own. Like, obviously, she doesn't think that, like, she's leaving them with no support, but 100%, Chris feels unsupported in this new situation where their brother is out of the house, their mother is like, putting another guy inside of their household, just as she's going through a messy whatever is going on with her and Asgore. Like, yes, the Asgore coming onto her is not her fault. I am not faulting her for that. That is 100% on Asgore. But what is at fault is her not putting her foot down and saying, Asgore, shut the fuck up, stop bringing our kid into it, and stop harassing me. Like, I moved on, just stop it. Like, she never puts her foot down. And I think she is like that. I don't think she ever since they got the divorce, I don't think even once she did that. Because that's just how she is. That's the kind of character she is. Even in Undertale, she's the kind of character who will wait for things to become better. She's not gonna take an action. She's gonna take care of people in her life, but she's not gonna do any meaningful actions to actually help them in the situations they're in. And I think this is 100% applying, to the situation between her and Chris. And the thing is, once again, this kid is witnessing the messiest divorce of the century between their parents, and then, like, obviously the divorce happened a long time ago, but seemingly for them it's still a fresh wound, at least to some degree, because of the way they react to Sans being in there. Like, quite possibly it is because of Asgore, constantly assuring Chris in some degree that, she's gonna still have some feelings for me, we're still gonna be one family. Maybe he's giving, like, Chris some false hope. I believe that. But it doesn't mean she doesn't have to sit them down and say, what your father doing is wrong. I am sorry. I'm gonna put myself out there. You might see someone. And also, it's kind of crazy to bring a clerk inside of your house where your fucking kid lives at 2 a.m, like, music loud, blaring, being drunk, after you know him for seemingly, like, if we take what Sans says seriously about befriending our mom last night, which I do think is serious, it's played off as a joke because, he's a jokester, but I do think that also happened. So, we're seemingly, like, on Saturday, when does this happen? So, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, she knew him for 4 days, she brings him into the house. Like, that's crazy, especially with the fact that after Chris looks into the fridge, there's a ketchup bottle. He's putting his things in. Like, this is quite literally a metaphor for them moving way too fast, and this being very uncomfortable for Chris, especially since, like, they never got properly introduced into the situation. So 100% understand people for whom, like, Toriel's character is a bit shattered now, and Sansa's character is shattered too. For me personally, I kind of expected this from Toriel, but with how Sans behaved, like, for me, it was, like, even outrageous. Like, I was like, is this a guy I fucking love? I loved? Is this the Mia I sipped over on Tumblr during 2010s? No way. Like, no way. Because he just comes off so cold and uncaring. And he always is like that. But the thing is, I was talking about this with a friend of mine, and he pointed out to me that most of the time we talk to Sans, there's Papyrus to counterweight it, on the side maybe. Or, like, Sans is just talking about Papyrus. So, like, most of the time he is an asshole, but it is either counteracted by Papyrus being a very nice person, or he's just talking about Papyrus and being nice about Papyrus, so we don't see an assholishness of his. I do think that it's we saw this kind of side of Sans to a degree, at least when we talked to him in the Merton restaurant. It is. I always found it like the most creepy, probably like moment with Sans. I don't fucking care about genocide and all of that bullshit, but he quite literally says to presumed 8-year-olds that he would have killed them on the spot if he didn't have like a prior connection tutorial. So he was always an asshole. Like he was always a bit uncaring. I think. I think he was always like a bit like nihilistic and whatever, but for some reason it is more counteracted in Undertale, where I think his situation is even more desperate. So it is interesting to note. Maybe, you know, whatever is happening in Deltarune and then gets them into the Undertale timeline is so massive that he just kind of like lets go of that assholishness, or he, like, you know, rounds out as a person. But it is also sad that they don't really like, they appeared recently in Undertale, so who knows. But anyway, for sure, like, he's such a fucking asshole. The way he says, oh, I'm sure she'll work it out about Susie after she leaves at 2 in the morning. Or don't go for her, she's gonna be fine. Like, that's fucked up as hell to say. She is a teenager. You are like raising up someone's fucking mom in front of them. And like, genuinely, this situation is so insensitive from both of their sides. It takes two to tango, obviously. But yeah, it's just like, it makes me want to scream. For tutorials, this is more or less like the characterization, once again, that I kind of not that I waited for it, but I kind of anticipated that it's gonna go this way. For Sans, this shouldn't have come out of the left field, but it did anyway. Like, I think the setup, the punchline, the multiple punchlines to his, you know, presence inside of the Dreamer household, it just builds up to this extremely unlikable characterization of him. So yeah, I don't know. He's fucked up, man. What is his deal in Deltarune? I don't know. A lot of people are saying that it would be really fun if he has like one-on-one, like Gerson did with Susie. Maybe I see it, you know, like Chris had a one-on-one, yes, in the weird route, but still, with Spamped and Neo, which is like the most related secret boss to them. Susie had one-on-one with Gerson, who is probably was the closest, like, you know, secret boss for her. And it would make sense if Ralsei had a one-on-one with someone else. Quite possibly Sans, because he is really good at reading people. And as I mentioned previously, Ralsei doesn't lie. He just doesn't tell things. He keeps them inside. So maybe Sans would be really good at reading him, and that would like play into the whole gimmick or whatever is gonna happen inside of the bottle. It would be an interesting concept. I'm not sure 100% that's how it's gonna happen, but you know, like, maybe it will. Maybe this will like turn me around once again on liking Sans, and we will see that yes, he behaved like an asshole in that situation, but he is not generally an asshole. We'll see. We'll see. Other than that, I don't really have much to say about these two. I do have like a connection here between the Dark World and Sans, and I think I touched upon it, but it is quite literally only because seemingly he could have some knowledge of the Dark World and his door, right? Like, it's the same as the traveling doors inside of the Dark World. So whatever's going on with him, it is somehow, at least in Undertale, whatever's going on with him somehow is linked to Dark Worlds. Other than that, I don't really have anything to say about them, because once again, we don't really see, especially Papyrus, we don't really see a lot of them. So I just have less to say about them, I'm sorry. And, as I promised before, we're getting to the hand. The thing with hands is that it permeates Chris's image so much, but not in a good way. In chapter 1, if we use the shadow crystal in the light world, Chris is missing their hands. They are hands that they're looking at through the shadow crystal. In chapter 3, if you enter 1225, into the machine with the gacha pawns in the rank B room, I think. It takes you to an endless corridor that repeats itself, and you have to find like another one of those gumball machines. And if you interact with it, it says like your hand went in, you can't see it anymore, your hand went missing. Like it's very scary, spoopy imagery about missing hands. And Chris is struggling with playing piano until they are encouraged by Susie, which also relates to their hands quite seemingly because they smack on the piano when we ask them to play, and they can. We hear them play like pianos that might not be played well. My ass, it was amazing. I almost cried. So for sure they know how to play piano and they do it quite well. But somehow, for some reason, they can't, and it feels like their hands are missing. Why 1225? Because, stick with me here, I think whatever Chris's trauma is with hands and missing hands is also related to death in some way. Maybe, because I don't know if I mentioned this before, but I do believe that December is the original owner or the original player of the Holiday Manor piano, because we do hear from Noelle's blogs that Chris plays the piano, so it could be alluding Chris played the piano for her when they were small kids, when they were little. But, and when we examine the pianos, Noelle says the piano is not played anymore, and this could allude to the fact that they, Chris and Noelle, drifted apart, or it could also allude to the fact that December possibly played it in the past. And I do believe that it might be in a way that's like December played the piano, Chris thought it was really cool. They picked up the piano. They started like getting interested in it. They were like googling tutorials of piano and video games. But that's like it could be a huge cope. But I do think their hand imagery is somehow connected to December, and their hand imagery is also connected to them playing the piano. So I don't think that's that much of a cope. It is a cope, but not that huge. So I did put the hand here just because genuinely I don't really have much to say about it, besides the fact that like Chris quite possibly went through something extremely traumatic that made them feel quite possibly quite powerless, because like if you're missing your hand, there's some movements that you can't do anymore. So maybe it is to signify their feeling of powerlessness, especially with how they are, refusing to play the piano until Susie and Ralph encourage them. So maybe they just hate doing anything like related to December because they feel the guilt, and that includes playing the piano. It does put a question mark on the fact that like when was the last time Chris played the piano, because it could be before Death's disappearance, but I don't think that's likely. I think they stopped playing the piano, much later than that, because Nurse does mention that they are used to visiting and playing the piano in the hospital, and I don't think she would have mentioned it if it was like years ago. Like she would have mentioned it in a different way. She would have mentioned it probably like, oh, I remember years ago, like like how QC of the QC diner mentions to Chris the hot chocolate. She does mention that it's been like a very long time, which the nurse doesn't. So it can also be pointing towards the fact that they feel helpless even more now that we're in control of their body, and they don't want us to soil the piano for them at some point. It's also quite obvious that there's imagery related to hands, also because quite possible personal feelings of Toby Fox, because if you're not aware, he did have a hand injury for a long time while composing and coding deltarune. So that could also be like relating, like obviously It's probably not the only thing that connects he and Chris and the meta narrative, but it's silly to deny that there might be quite a big connection there, especially with how Chris refuses to play and Toby had no ability to properly compose for a long time. So maybe he put some personal feelings also in this imagery, but other than that, I don't really have much to say about it, which I say at every topic lately. I'm sorry, but we're getting to the bottom of the barrel. Like I talked about the big guns, and now we're getting like to the nitty gritty of it. And the fun gang. Let's talk about these freaks. I think we should start with the prophecy. Because I think I mentioned it before, but a lot of people assume that the prophecy is out of order, and the prophecy mentions 4 heroes. Not a fan of this. I do think that they mention 3 heroes, and they are mentioned in that specific order for a specific reason. Because first it mentions Wolsey is the lonely prince of the dark, there to guide the Lightners, the heroes, and then we mention the human cage, Chris. I don't remember any text about the human, what's it called? Human cage, so I can't say much about it. I remember Susie's reaction. She says like, oh, they should make you cooler. It's quite also possible that the thing in the prophecy is not Chris specifically, but the vessel, because quite a lot of ways that you can make the vessel look also kind of look like Chris. So, you know, it's possible that the human cage depicted was not necessarily meant to be Chris in the first place. It also makes me wonder about Wolsey, because he's one of the only, he also doesn't really correspond to his image. Maybe it is because he keeps getting changed by Susie. Maybe he was meant to go through the entire journey, having his hood up and his head on. But because Susie keeps bullying him about not being able to hear him through the hat and the hood, that he takes it off and becomes like his own person and starts to break out as a prophecy. So that might be it. Human cage, as I mentioned, might be the vessel as well. And Susie, 100%, I believe Susie is not in the prophecy. I'm sorry, someone had to say it. Oh my god, listen, someone had to say it. So, my thing with the prophecy, the girl in the picture looks nothing like Susie. I'm sorry, she looks much more like Noelle, and my personal opinion is that Noelle was the original girl in the prophecy, and it just so happened, especially since Chris and Noelle were supposed to have the project until Susie came in, and Noelle also wanted to go to the Dark World, and Susie is mentioned by Gerson to be the dragon. And what do the heroes do in the first chapter of Lord of the Hammer? They defeat the dragon and the king. So it's quite possible that Susie was supposed to take a much more antagonistic role, but through the change of heart, through her pure hopefulness, raw power, she broke her fate, and she carved out a place for herself to be that girl that Noelle was supposed to be. And why is Noelle not that girl? Because she does not, strike me as someone who has hope crossed on her heart. So why would she be representative initially of that kind of character? I do think that there's also the fact that December disappeared. Maybe that broke her down, and she's much less hopeful now. Maybe if she developed alongside her sister, she would have, fit into that role, but she's not ready probably yet. Maybe also she will be the one taking the place of Susie, not in the way that, hope crossed on her heart, but through love, level up, getting stronger, getting power, weird root. So maybe actually the weird root is about going back to the roots of the prophecy, because we always think at chapter 2 we always thought that the weird root is the abnormality. It's like breaking the prophecy, going against the grain. Maybe But also, have you considered that it might be going for the grain? Because it is quite obvious that the weird root is bad with all of its applications and all of that bullshit. But still, maybe it is going like for the grain. Maybe we are carving out, Susie out of the team somehow and putting Noelle in. Maybe that's why we're putting such close bound once again between Chris and Noelle, so they can be the human cage and she can be the powerful girls that found love, whatever, blah blah. Also, the hopefulness may relate actually to Jess's disappearance in a way that she didn't give up hope, that her sister is out there. So maybe the hope crossed on her heart is her determination to find this. So, and maybe in the normal prophecy, she would have, used that hopefulness to, find love, find whatever. Maybe she would have gotten with a dragon, who knows. But Susie breaks it all, and actually I think the normal route is the breaking of the prophecy. Yes, Ralsei keeps saying oh, the prophecy is going according to what I know, but he does mention that Susie is doing things that he could not have predicted. He predicted she would wear ribbons, and she straight up refuses to do it. So, there's many pointers towards actually the prophecy being kind of broken little by little by Susie being in the fun game, being in the narrative. So I do feel the weird root might be actually not breaking out of the prophecy, but maybe boxing yourself inside of it. A huge cope. I know. Sue me, try me. Other than that, what do we know about Ralsei? Ralsei, once again, is not saying everything he knows. There's a bunch of shit he probably 100% knows, and he just doesn't say it to us. And it is freaky deaky, obviously, but I don't think it's a bad thing. I don't think he's being malicious in any regard. I really don't. I used to think that before, chapter 3 and 4, but now I do think that he's, one crash out away from just, ending it all for himself, not for other people. Because, I do think he's, suffering really, so much from, all of the things that he knows and can't tell to his friends. And I don't think he has it in him to lie to them outright. I think if he does lie, it's gonna be one-time climax thing. Saying, he lies about his own well-being. That's it. He says, I'm fine. I don't have feelings. I don't have desires. He's lying to himself and to us. But I don't think that counts. I think that's different. When we ask him, direct questions, he can dance around the subject, but he's not gonna lie to us. How does he know the prophecy? Who created him? Once again, it might be Gaster. He might be the son of Gaster, Kami said in one of his videos. I personally don't subscribe to it. I think it is the personification of what Chris wanted to be growing up. He wanted to fit in much better with the Dreamer family. So maybe it's but it is interesting. What objects is he? And why does he appear in every dark world we visit? It seemingly, implies that he's not moving between dark light worlds, because he can't, but he is probably with Chris at all times, but we don't see him in our inventory, so what's up with that? Who knows? But we do know that some things that Chris carries on them, we don't see, their knife, for example. Obviously, with the fact that Chris might have items that we don't know of on them at all times, it does not make it easier guessing what Ralsei really is. There are some series the red horns and whatever. I don't know. I don't have a stance on this. So you guys have fun with it. I'm out of ideas. And with Chris, we talk so much about Chris. Poor Chris. I don't know. Let's talk a bit about the weird root, maybe. With how I do have one weird root cope, let's say. It might be more of a headcanon, maybe. But I do think that maybe Chris, because it's quite, You know, the situation with Chris is kind of like with Frisk, you know? Frisk is refusing to take, you know, a soda, but they're good with, like, killing everyone. With Chris, it's kind of like the same in my opinion. Like, they are ready to kill one of their friends through manipulating one of their childhood friends, and, but at the same time, they don't want to look in Azrael's room. What is their extent of intervention in our influence? Like, is there like some sort of weakened willpower in them in chapter 2 that allows us to do these things, and then in chapter 4, once again, it's we're weakened so much, they're weakened so much spiritually that they cannot refuse our influence, or stay with me, stay with my cope, or the weird root is actually born from Chris's, like, maybe intrusive thoughts of some sort. Maybe they're letting us do it because they're also kind of like dissociating, thinking, oh, this is not real, I'm just gonna do what I want to show that, you know, whatever. I don't think they're letting us do it, you know, in this kind of way. I think they're still against it, but I think these intrusive thoughts let us slip into it. Let us slip into letting, you know, into Chris doing these things, commanding Noel, blah, blah, blah. Because obviously we're the ones doing it, but I think kind of like Chris having like these intrusive thoughts about all of these things, they might let us, you know, get into it, get into the weird root, slip into it, whatever. And that's my hope for Chris Dreamer. It's the last one for this board. And I'm proud to announce that finishes our copes. We're done. Can you believe it, guys? Can you believe it, guys? Christmas, just a week away. Can you believe it, guys? If you watched this far, and if you sat through all of my copes, all of my explanations for this, you know, all of my really crazy ramblings, because I will admit some of this bullshit is like very, very copy, like it's very flimsy, it's not really connected, but I had so much fun. Do you know that all of my roommates are telling me to leave this up because this livens up the living room? This insanity. My literally everyone who sees the photo of this is like, yeah, you're kind of crazy, man. You're kind of crazy. But I had so much fun. I cannot stress enough how much fun I had talking about all of this, talking about all of my thoughts about all of these things that are really important to me, and I really love them, and I love Deltarune so much, and Undertale too, obviously. I love Undertale so much too. But Deltarune, oh my god, this is just like a whole new experience, and I just love it so much, and I cannot wait to edit it, sit down, and post this, because there's so many, you know, I just want to talk about it to people. So, first of all, once again, thank you so much for letting me speak. Second of all, I would appreciate any thoughts you had during any segments of this video. If you're sitting there thinking, oh, I don't have anything interesting to say, or someone said it first, who cares? You know, conversations, you can say the same concept in different words, and that can change the entire context of the implication. So, you know, do it. Write it down. You're passionate about it. I would be happy to hear it. I would be happy to talk about it. So, you know, thank you so much for making it this long. Please leave your comments. I would love to talk about this franchise. And, yeah, see you